Hokage I can fully level up with one click. Chapter 481-500. Chapter 481 turned over by the big guy. There was a dead silence on the huge ruins. Armament Haki, Jinbei covered his arms, and when his pupils shrank slightly, he asked anxiously, "Why did you attack us? Are you planning to catch Brother Ace and make a deal with the world government?" In Jinbei's eyes, it is not uncommon for other pirates to deliberately attack other pirates in order to trade with the world government. Among them, similar things happened in their Chiwahai. Use him to trade. Chinyu glanced at Ace, who was lying on the ground and passed out, and said, "You guessed wrong. I'm just going to spread my name and make this sea turbulent because of me. Originally, I did want to kill him, but now I think of a better way." A better way. Jinping was stunned at first, and then said in a hurry, "As long as you don't kill him, anything can be discussed. And, in order to express sincerity, I will answer you the question you asked me just now. I was on the way here, in a tavern, and accidentally got your information and a reward order. According to the time at sea, it should be a big force and get your information soon. Are you satisfied with this answer?" Looking at Jinping, who was a little anxious, the soul flame in Qin Yu's eyes flickered, and he also fell into a brief pondering. He did not doubt that Jinping, who always claimed to be chivalrous, would tell lies. Only in this way can I prove that when I escaped from the big underwater prison and caused such a big mess, why the shock point only increased by a few hundred points. Moreover, with Jinbei's nervous attitude, he may already know Ace's true identity. At the same time, I am afraid that Whitebeard has given more orders, and he must get Ace's order. This made Chinyu dismiss the idea of killing Ace to increase his prestige. Just ask, no matter how beautiful a dead person was in his life, once he dies, his reputation will gradually be forgotten as time goes on. Do you want me to let him go? Chinyu suddenly raised his head and looked at Jinping. Faced with this unexpected question, Jinbei nodded subconsciously. Before he could react, a phone bug flew towards him. "Take a few pictures for me to prove that I defeated him," Chinyu said lightly. As he said that, he also stepped out with his skeleton feet and stepped directly on Ace's head. In Chinyu's eyes, Ace would definitely join the Whitebeard pirates and become the captain of the 2nd Division. Once the reputation rises, the deeds of whoever defeated him will be on his head for the rest of his life. At that time, Ace will be Chinyu's mobile broadcast. Looking at the serious skeleton demon with a serious face, not joking at all, Jinping's cheeks twitched slightly, and he looked at Ace's eyes with a hint of pity. However, compared to watching Ace being killed and taking a few pictures, Jinbei chose the latter. Accompanied by the phone bug, a click sounded, and the picture was directly recorded in the phone bug. "Well, it's a good shot. This person will pay you back first." Chinyu picked up the phone bug and immediately kicked the unconscious Ace towards Jinping. Looking at the dignified supernova, he was kicked away like garbage, and Jinping's cheeks twitched, but he still took the person next. After double-checking, I found that Ace just passed out, and finally heaved a sigh of relief. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for getting 1000 World Turbulence points. The host's current balance is 2003 points, and it reaches the threshold of random unblocking. Do you want to operate it immediately? The ethereal voice of the system resounded in Chinyu's mind, causing the soul flame in his eyes to throb. Just now he beat Fire Fist Ace by chance. However, this matter has not yet spread, and it should not cause turmoil in the world. Suddenly getting 1000 World Turbulence points is probably related to what Jinpei just said. I just didn't know that the big guy flipped Chinyu's brand and read his resume, which shook his worldview. On the other hand, if it wasn't for a pivotal existence, Chinyu wouldn't be able to get 1000 turbulence points in an instant. Immediately lift the restriction at random. Chinyu didn't think much, and quickly gave the order. Ding dong, Please wait a moment, host. Ding dong, the deduction of 2,000 points of turbulence has been successful, the system is being unlocked, and the dimension is restricting the host. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for successfully unlocking Mangekyo Sharingan. The current turbulence value is 3, and the next unlocking requires 4,000 turbulence value. Mangekyo Sharingan. Chinyu couldn't help but startled. Unlocking this system is also too embarrassing. It is clear that he can reach the eternal state in one step, but he has to miss a foot and hang on the mountainside. However, Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, the pupil power contained in it, is indeed far from Mangekyo Sharingan. Able to unlock Mangekyo Sharingan at the moment will also add a few points of confidence to Chinyu's next actions, which is also considered very good. Mosamosi, I'm Marco, I'm Marco. The voice of the phone bug rang suddenly. Chinyu withdrew from the space of consciousness, and saw Jinping glanced at himself with a hesitant expression, and finally answered the phone. Brother Marco, I'm Shippen, what's the matter? Jinbei was the first to speak. However, I don't know if he was worried about Chinyu's existence and didn't tell what happened just now. Brother Jinbei, didn't Dad tell you to block Fire Fist Ace? Is there any result? We are very close to the position of your life card reaction, so we will go to support now. Marco's voice came from inside the phone bug. Although Jinpei is expensive as the Shichibukai, with his own prestige and means, he is obviously unable to bless Fishman Island, which is a transit point for pirates to the new world of the Great Waterway. This drives Jinbei closer to the Whitebeard pirates who protect Fishman Island. Hearing this, Jinbei showed a hint of hesitation, and finally said, Ace's matter has been settled, you can come over now. Ace has already lost, Marco exclaimed in surprise, and said, it seems that, Brother Jinpei, you usually don't show the scenery, but you have many tricks to hide your clumsiness. You can even solve this tricky thing. Wait a second, we'll rush over now, about half an hour. Abandoning these words, Jinping didn't even have the idea of greetings. He hung up the phone, looked at Chinyu, and said, you also heard that the Whitebeard pirates will arrive soon. I advise you to leave quickly. In case Ace is recruited into the Whitebeard pirates, I'm afraid I won't give up on what happened just now, and I'll definitely find my way back. At that time, all I can do is help. You said a few good words from the side. Chapter 482-Learn Fish Maneuver. There was a dead silence on the huge ruins. Jin stared straight at Uchiha Chinyu. In his eyes, facing the head of the four emperors, Whitebeard, the strongest man at sea, as long as he is not a fool, he will definitely flee. No, I want to meet Whitebeard, and I want to see if the boy who lights the candle will really trouble me. Chinyu played with the crutches in his hand, and immediately said with a smile. Crazy. Jinbei was stunned for a while, and said in a hurry, are you crazy? That's Whitebeard, and even the Navy headquarters, and even the world government are afraid of the existence. Once Brother Ace really wants to pursue what happened just now, I'm afraid other people will favor him too. Quote. Even if I look at the relationship, I can't help you to ask for mercy. So what? Chinyu smiled genially. Don't worry, if people don't offend me, I won't offend others. If anyone offends me, so what if it's a Whitebeard? Jinping's good intentions, I've accepted it. If you're going to repay your love, why don't you show me Murloc Jiu-Jitsu and Murloc Karate? Jinbei suddenly became angry. However, looking at Chinyu who didn't take things to heart at all, he stopped talking. In the end, he sighed heavily and said, forget it, let me demonstrate to you, Murloc Jiu-Jitsu and Murloc Karate. Just now, if you let go of Brother Ace's kindness, it will be written off. Wait a while, no matter what happens when you meet Whitebeard, I won't say a word to you. Our benevolence and righteousness will be cut off. Understood, stop mother-in-law and mother, hurry up and punch me. Chinyu gave Jinping a blank look and urged. It can be said that the best part of Jinping is chivalry, and the most unsuccessful part is chivalry. If it is not chivalrous, it has become a stumbling block. He also won't lose Shichibukai's position in the original book because of Ace. It will not become one of the 7 seas, and it will not be able to bless Fishman Island. Jinpei immediately concluded, and finally, seeing Qin Yu's insistence, he could only sigh faintly, carrying Ace who was in a coma, and walked to the beach. Listen, whether it's Murloc Karate or Murloc Jiu-Jitsu, we collectively call it Murloc Jutsu, and it's the accumulation of our Murlocs and Mermen for thousands of years. Jinbei put Ace aside and pulled face explained. For a long time, many of you humans have peeked at the fish body technique, even the Navy headquarters and even the world government are no exception. However, due to the difference in body structure between humans and Murlocs, practicing Murloc Karate requires a super strong physical foundation, and practicing Murloc Jiu-Jitsu also requires amazing flexibility, and Murlocs are born with the ability to handle seawater. The ability to control can only be done. Quote. Having said this, Jinping looked at Qin Yu and said, "So, having said so much, what I want to tell you is that human beings are not incapable of learning fish body art, but the difficulty is very high, and the success rate is 1 in a million. That means that among a million people, there may only be one person, and this person will learn slower than Murlocs. If you are really interested in taijutsu, I advise you to find a navy and learn the 6 styles better." The voice of Cheng's words echoed in the mouth of the sea, and there was no way to disperse it for a long time. Seeing his mother possessed, with a bitter expression, Qin Yu patted his shoulder helplessly and said, all right, just take a look at me as if I'm curious or interested, and play with me. Just take a look at the set and explain the key points to me at the same time. As for the preaching, I will talk about it after I finish reading it. Quote. Jinping suddenly became angry. After spending so much time, looking at Qin Yu who was still going his own way, Rao had the best temper, and Buddha was also angry. But in the face of chivalry, even though Jinbei was very upset, he still puffed up his cheeks and put on a Murloc Karate stance. Under the tension of the muscles, it bulged like a rock. His eyes were suddenly sharp, like a falcon. Jinbei moved suddenly. Murloc Karate 5000 Tile Jungchen. Boom. With a punch, the powerful air-squeezing force exploded instantly like a frenzy. It turned into a shock of air waves, and it smashed into the sea reef dozens of meters away. With the sound of a low explosion, the 7 to 8 meter high reef shattered. Seeing this scene, Qin Yu was also amazed. He quickly released the Bone King's transformation, intending to steal the fish body technique with the help of the one-key full-level system. Tang Saowa Jungchen. Gun Wave. Hit the water. Merman Karate Esoteric Wu Lai Guan. A series of tricks were displayed by Jinpei. The reef at the estuary was obviously the target and was seeded. Accompanied by the sound of explosions, they were instantly smashed into pieces. Look, this is the last resort. Mermaid Jitsu Super Current. Jinbei let out a roar, and his body that was originally tough as a rock turned into a snake-like softness in an instant. He grabbed onto the seawater with both hands, as if clasping the entity. The next moment, without any bells and whistles, it suddenly swung out. Boom. Hundreds of meters of sea surface was affected in an instant, and the endless waves turned into huge Uzumaki tornadoes, rushing straight to the largest reef in the distance. With the sound of the shocking impact, the rock like a hill cracked and shattered. The seawater that was waiting to be splashed fell like a rainstorm. Jinbei, who continued to perform fish body art without interruption, also became breathless and stopped. You saw it too. This is the fish body technique. I don't care if you see it clearly or not. According to the agreement, I will explain a few things to you next. Jinping calmed his breath a little, then turned to look at Qin Yu. However, when he entered the scene, his pupils contracted suddenly, revealing a hint of surprise. Are you a skeleton demon? In the reward orders given by the Navy, they always like to deteriorate, especially Chin-Yu, who is like the mastermind of prison escape. The face of the Bone King is used as the main reward image, but the real appearance is a bit blurry. After all, in their records of advancing the city, Chin-Yu destroyed the phone bug as soon as he came out on the 5th floor. When escaping from prison, he still used the posture of the Bone King, so there was no clear portrait along the way. Over time, many people's preconceived idea is that the skeleton demon can plan such a huge prison escape event that is more powerful than the Golden Lion. Then he is definitely an old monster-like existence. What's the matter? Is my face dirty? Chin-Yu touched his cheek. The demonstration just now took 15 minutes, and there was not much time left until Whitebeard arrived. He had to learn the fish body technique before that, otherwise, if he couldn't agree to fight, he would run without worrying about it. No, nothing, I just didn't expect that the mastermind who planned the jailbreak event looks younger than Brother Ace, and he is indeed a monster. Jinbei regained his senses and explained quickly. Chapter 483-Crime Scapegoat. Looking at that face, younger than Ace, obviously subverted Jinbei's cognition. However, Jinbei quickly noticed his gaffe, and after a dry cough, he quickly changed the subject. There's not much time until Brother Marco arrives. I'll finish the deal with you first and explain the fish body technique to you. For this proposal, Chin-Yu did not reject it. If he can use more means to protect himself, then he will have more ability to protect himself. Moreover, in this boundless sea, it is obviously more advantageous to have fish body art. Following Jinping's explanation, Chin-Yu's brows furrowed, combining these tips with the fish body technique he had just seen. It can be said that Chin-Yu, who has stayed in the two worlds, is no longer an ignorant teenager. At the moment when Jinpei explained, various moves have emerged in his mind, which are consistent with them. After reacting, a series of ethereal system prompts have already sounded in my mind. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for learning Murloc Karate. May I ask if you can reach full level with one click? Ding dang, congratulations to the host who has learned Tangsao Tile Zhengchen, whether it will be full level immediately with one click. Ding dong, congratulations to the host on learning. The series of system prompts sounded like a symphony in Chin-Yu's mind. He didn't care how many tricks he had done in mathematics, Chin-Yu gave a direct order with a thought. All at once to full level with one click. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, the Fishman Karate has been successfully completed with one click. Ding dang, congratulations to the host, Tangsao Hua Zhengquan succeeded at full level with one click. Ding dong, congratulations to the host. A series of prompts sounded again, but this time, it was obviously mixed with a large amount of information flow, which made Chin-Yu feel dizzy. At the same time, it was more than 10 nautical miles away from the deserted island. A huge pirate ship is rapidly approaching by the wind and waves. If people see it, the pirate flag fluttering in the wind will definitely take a breath of air. This is known as the head of the four emperors, the Whitebeard pirates, actually appeared in the first half of the Great Channel. Dad, it seems that we will soon arrive at the deserted island where Jinping is. Do you think Ace will join us? Marco glanced at the life card fragment in his hand, which became more and more violent, and couldn't help but turn around and asked. Marco, you are questioning Dad's confidence, be careful, we will tie you up and throw it into the sea. Sachi, the captain of the 4th Division, who was combing the nose of the plane and wearing a sailor suit, took the lead in teasing. Sachi is right, but Marco underestimated his father's reputation. How could a newcomer not give in? Don't forget, Daddy is the strongest existence in the sea, and that kid is also blinded by lard, so he dares to challenge Daddy. The scene suddenly became boiling. It can be said that in their eyes, in this sea, as long as they are not fools, they will never make crazy moves to challenge the four emperors. Okay, let's talk to each of you. Does Dad still have the right to speak? I heard that the Advanced City Prison was destroyed a few days ago, and even the prisoners of the 6th floor Infinite Prison escaped. Marco rolled their eyes at them, changed the subject and said, "Yeah." After Whitebeard raised his head and took a sip of wine, he said, "I also heard about this. However, Ace and I are bound to win, even if he is tied to the boat, it is necessary." Dad is right. He doesn't want to, so he tied him directly to the boat. If he dares to tell him, we will definitely educate him about how to be a human being. Of course, this education requires fists. The 8 characters on the corner of Beasta's mouth who shook and said jokingly. As soon as these words fell, everyone immediately agreed. Marco gave them a helpless look, and said, "Okay, don't make a fool of yourself, that kid is considered outstanding among the newcomers. When you are the same age, who will have a reward of 400 million, this is still in the first half of the Great Waterway. A reward of 400 million is offered, which may not be too brilliant in the New World. But if the age and the time spent at sea are counted, it is enough to show how good a newcomer is. By the way, have you been paying attention recently? Among those who escaped from prison, there seems to be an unknown person. It seems to be called the Great Skeleton Demon. I have never heard of it in the sea." Joe suddenly looked at Whitebeard. "Road. Dad, is that a person from your era? It's not easy to be able to preside over such a prison break event and be defined by the Navy headquarters and even the world government as the mastermind of the prison break, right? I heard that his reward is now 350 million. As soon as these words fell, everyone's eyes locked on Whitebeard's body. After all, many people are interested in the sudden emergence of a stranger from an unknown source. Skull Demon. Whitebeard frowned, took a sip of sake, then shook his head and said, "No, there is no such person in my memory." "No," Beasta said first, "since even Dad said no, I think it must be the Navy headquarters, or the world government, worried that the advanced city would be destroyed, causing a large number of fugitives to escape, and deliberately pushed a person out to be a scapegoat. If I guess correctly, this kind of guy will soon be caught by the world government, and then he will publicize his great achievements, and even the mastermind of the escape will be caught, and a conspiracy will be disintegrated." When these words fell, many people in the field nodded in agreement. They have dealt a lot with the Navy, and they know what tricks and means they have. "Okay, don't discuss it here." Whitebeard waved his hand and said, "Anyway, my goal this time is just Ace's child. Marco, go and see how much time there is." Facing the son of his former rival, the thought of being able to call him Daddy was extremely sour. "Dad, I'll go take a look now. There's Shi Ping, and a new recruit is here." Marco dropped these words and turned to look in the direction of the bow. The first thing to notice is the island with its gradually clear outline. Looking at the deserted estuary, his eyes narrowed slightly. "Dad, I saw Jinping, and Ace was in a coma. It seems that Jinping is more ruthless than expected. However, there is a young man next to Jinbei. He seems to be about the same age as Ace. There seems to be no such person in the intelligence. There's a stranger." Joes raised his brows and said, "Could it be a new recruit from the Spade Pirates, or someone from Shippen?" "Yoja, you've been drinking too much. How could there be human beings on Jinping's ship? I think this young man should be admiring the prestige of his father and planning to take the opportunity to worship him." Chapter 484 The Whitebeard Pirates. Beasta is right, this should be a rookie who admires his father, but our Whitebeard pirates are not random people, they can join casually. Captain of the 6th Division, Brahmanth carried the giant gavel, said with a big laugh. Seeing the lively scene all of a sudden, Whitebeard giggled a few times before saying, "Okay, don't be ashamed in front of Jinping, prepare to tie Ace to the boat for me." "Dad, don't worry, we will definitely complete the task," all the captains shouted in response. As the huge Moby Dick approached, the waves that were set off went directly to the shore. Chin Yu, who was still thinking about the fish body technique, was also forced back to his senses. Dad is here, please ask yourself for more happiness. Jinping looked back at Qin Yu, and immediately carried Ace. Before he could speak, the huge bridge was on the Moby Dick, and went to the desert island. The people who came first were Marco and Vista. Brother Jinbei, you've worked hard for you this time. Leave Ace to me, Dad also wants to meet you. Marco spoke first. However, his eyes fell on Qin Yu's body intentionally or unintentionally, and his brows could not help frowning. In his memory, this young man seemed to have a vague impression. It's just that, no matter how he investigates, there is no way to come up with an answer. Okay, don't make Dad wait for a long time. Dad spent a lot of time in order to get Isla on board. Vista took Ace, and couldn't help but turn around and go back to take credit. Seeing this scene, Jinping couldn't help but stunned, and said anxiously, Brother Marco, wait a moment, I have someone here. As he spoke, Jinbei turned his head and looked behind him. However, Jinbei's pupils shrank suddenly at the moment of entering his eyes. Do not. It should be said that even Marco and Vista are no exception. A moment ago, they also saw a young man standing here, but the moment they lost their minds just now, this young man disappeared like smoke out of thin air. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed that someone could disappear under their eyes in an instant. Who the hell are you, dare to break into our Whitebeard pirates? A hurried shout came from the deck of the ship. The expressions of Marco, Vista, and Shippen changed dramatically. Before I could think about it, I quickly got out and hurried to the deck. As soon as he stepped on the deck, he saw that the young man who had disappeared out of thin air actually appeared on the deck, facing the Whitebeard far away. Boy, if you don't speak, then don't blame me, you're welcome. Harda, wearing a green noble costume, held a saber, and rushed out in an instant. As the captain of the 12th Division, his strength and speed are also not bad. A dodging body, spanning more than 10 meters, appeared first behind Qin Yu. Looking at Qin Yu, as if he didn't know it at all, Harda's face showed a grim look, and the speed of the big knife in his hand soared even more. Be careful, step back quickly. Jinbei's voice suddenly sounded. Not to mention Harda, even the captains around him looked slightly stagnant. However, before they could pursue it, a crisp metal collision sounded suddenly. When the sharp blade instantly slashed on Qin Yu's shoulder. However, it was as pitch black as ink, and it was still entwined with Lu Ying's domineering arrogance, causing the pupils of everyone present to shrink suddenly. This is the high armament Hokage. Marco's expression couldn't help changing. The next moment, he saw Qin Yu turn his head indifferently and look at Harda. Are you trying to tickle me? The small voice, at this moment, made people feel a huge shock. Harda's face sank, and Armament Hokage quickly covered his hands and spread to the blade. However, Armament Hokage had just finished covering, a hand like a dragon's claw, clasped on the blade like lightning. The next moment, without any bells and whistles, he suddenly clenched tightly. Flower Sakura Thunder Dragon Breath. Boom! A thunderous explosion resounded. The violent current exploded like a frenzy, directly engulfing Harda in it. The blade that shattered in response, even more fragments flew, and were inserted obliquely on the deck. The violent scene shook everyone's nerves. As soon as Marco's muscles tightened, the green undead flames surged and rushed towards the thunder light quickly. However, as soon as it got close, a black shadow was thrown out directly. What caught the eye was Harda, who was completely paralyzed. Marco's pupils shrank slightly, but he didn't care too much, and stopped Harda directly. Taking advantage of this chance to breathe, the thunder that enveloped the deck also disintegrated, revealing Qin Yu's figure. However, in the face of the captain, who was staring at him and surging at any time, Qin Yu seemed to be completely ignorant. his eyes turned in vain, he met Whitebeard's gaze, and said with a genial smile, "Whitebeard, this is how you treat guests. A visitor is coming from afar, aren't you going to give me a glass of water and wine?" Drinking. Harda rolled over on Marco's body, and with the help of the recovery ability of the undead flame, the numbness in his body was obviously dissipated. As soon as he got his footing, he reached out to his subordinate not far away, intending to seize the big sword and go to Chinyu to get his way back. After all, as the captain of the 12th Division in the Whitebeard Pirates, under the watchful eyes of the public, the first move suffered a big loss. For him, it was a shame. However, as soon as Harda took the first step, he was stopped by Jinping detectives. "Don't be impulsive, this kid is not an ordinary person. Brother Ace was almost killed in seconds because he underestimated him." The small voice, at this moment, seemed to be infused with a magic sound, and there was no way to disperse it for a long time. Everyone's nerves were suddenly tense, even Marco was no exception. "Jinpei, what were you talking about just now? Didn't you defeat Ace?" Vista asked eagerly. In his eyes, Chinyu seems to be younger than Ace. But Ace is the first supernova in the same period, and he has a reward of 400 million. This is not something ordinary people can compare. However, now Jinbei told him that the new king, who was famous for the Great Waterway, was defeated by the unknown junior. If you hadn't heard it with your own ears, I'm afraid no one would believe it. Feeling the suspicious gazes from all around, Jinping's face became more bitter, and he sighed helplessly and said, "That kid is the mastermind behind the plan to advance the escape from the Chinda prison, the great skeleton demon." "Is he the skeleton demon?" The expressions of the people present changed drastically. Just like Jinpei, in their eyes, a pirate who can make more noise than a golden lion should be an old bone of his age. At least, be like them, 40 or 50 years old, right? However, the results given now have subverted their cognition. Chapter 485 I Want to Fight 10. You can't believe it, right? Jinping smiled bitterly and said, "If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it. Not long ago, I got information that he sank Kizaru into the sea with one move, and his overall strength is probably stronger than Brother Ace." Stronger than Ace. The pupils of many people present shrank slightly. In their eyes, Ace is already the new king. With a reward of 400 million and many achievements, it is enough to show that his strength is not simple. However, now Jinbei told him that this little-known boy had better overall strength than Ace, and even defeated Ace. This is too shocking. Hee, it seems that you are really not used to my appearance. Judging people by appearances is rubbing shoulders with the god of death. Chinyu laughed dryly. As soon as the right hand was caught in the void, the space backpack was opened, and the scepter hidden inside was easily taken out. Before everyone could react, he stomped on the deck, and the pitch-black magic power quickly rolled out of Chinyu's body. The piercing white bones, the soul-flaming eyes of the gorilla Yuhi, and the terrifying costume, coupled with the golden scepter in his hand, completely changed the temperament of the whole body. If the Chinyu just a moment ago was a stinky little boy, then Chinyu now gives the impression that he is the mighty tyrant who dominates the world. Exudes from head to toe, his own talent is accompanied by magic, the taste of fine kamui pressure. The front and back are like two people's postures, which makes many people's pupils shrink slightly. Feeling the gazes from all around, Chinyu slammed the scepter tightly in his right hand towards the deck. In an instant, a thick fog that was as black as ink surged out from behind. Then a huge skeleton chair appeared behind Chinyu. Facing the gazes of everyone, Chinyu sat down with a slap in the face. Mad. There is no limit to the madness of riding a horse. Seeing Chinyu sitting down like no one else, this was the only thought of the captains. Arrogant, dare to go wild on the Moby Dick. Today I will take off your head and see what the so-called skeleton demon is. Vista was the first to roar angrily. As the captain of the 5th Division, in the Battle of the Top in the original book, but stopped the Eagle Eye who released the water. With one step, the whole person disappeared out of thin air like a ghost. However, under Chin Yu's high-level observation Haki, he was obviously locked on the disappearing Vista's body in an instant. In the deep-set eyes, the soul flame jumped, and he raised his head slightly to look at the sky. Seeing Chin Yu, who didn't care about himself at all, still sitting on the chair like a golden knife, Vista's face sank, his hands suddenly clenched the two knives, and roared in anger. Rose dance. A gust of wind blew up, and rose petals flew out from Vista's cloak. Armament Haki infused, it turned into a tornado and shot towards Chin Yu like a flying knife. The speed was so fast, it arrived in the blink of an eye. However, in the face of such a fancy blow, the captain present clearly knew that the greatest murderous intention contained in it was Vista, not these petals. Successful. Marco's voice suddenly sounded. There was a hint of joy on the faces of many captains present. I saw Vista, who had just disappeared in the sky of petals. At some point, Detour appeared behind Chin Yu's chair. The sharp blades clenched in both hands, under the rapid coverage of armament Haki, slashed down towards Chin Yu. Boy, if you want to blame it, you are too arrogant. It's too big of a loophole to get a chair like this to pretend to be a force. Double slash. Roaring again and again, Chin Yu raised his head abruptly under the powerful double knives. The deep-set soul flame eyes circled quickly like Uzumaki. The next moment, before everyone could react, Nine Tomo appeared, and there was blood spilling out of the white bone's eye socket, which looked extremely terrifying. However, before they could react, a huge pupil force rolled back like a hurricane. Boom! The dull sound of collision suddenly spread. Under Yuhi's blood like air, a clearly visible rib appeared behind Chin Yu. A larger skeleton figure, quickly constructed into a mature Susanoo, that bone-like posture, and Chin Yu's current identity as a big skeleton demon, is even more suitable. This is the animal system, the phantom beast, the humanoid skeleton form. Marco's expression couldn't help changing. This can't blame him for being preconceived like everyone else. After all, Sengoku in the Navy headquarters, who is in the form of a giant Buddha who uses his devil fruit ability, is not much different from Chin Yu. Whitebeard, is this how you treat guests? Chin Yu's voice also became indifferent because of the character of the Bone King. Vista, who was behind him, didn't even look at him, and said, if you plan to use these captains to send me off, then I'm afraid I can only tell you. I'm going to hit 10. One hit 10. The captain present was stunned. In the New World, these captains, who didn't have a splendid and fierce name, when have they been despised like this? Now this guy of unknown origin, when he appeared, he not only brought his own chair. As soon as he opened his mouth, he had to beat 10 of them, which would make them feel cheap. Okay, very good, we just underestimated you just now. You dare to be so contemptuous, then I will see what you can do now. Vista roared first. However, this time, before he could react, the Whitebeard who had been acting like a melon eater suddenly spoke up. Okay, let's all retire. This kid is right, he is also a guest when he walks in. I want to prepare a glass of wine for him. I also want to see this person who is known as the mastermind of prison escape and has caused headaches for the Navy headquarters and even the world government. What existence? Dad, Vista and Harta exclaimed in unison. They were embarrassed in public just now, and now they are suddenly told to stop. This is not even a chance to find a place. Okay, let's all step back. He is too arrogant to make a fuss about the Moby Dick, and he underestimates us, but to be able to make such a move in front of my father, such courage seems like a big skeleton. Demons are not just fake names. Marco stopped the two of them, looked at Chin Yu and said. As the captain of the first team, it not only means that his own strength has reached the level of the Emperor's deputy. More, he is similar to Ben Beckman, acting as a think tank in the Whitebeard Pirates. Seeing the conflict that was suddenly suppressed, Jinbei couldn't help but stunned. Before I could think about it, I hurried forward, poured a glass of wine, and handed it to Chinyu. At the beginning, he was still guessing why Chinyu wanted to see Whitebeard, but now it seems that it is not only beyond his understanding. It could really keep him alive. Thank you very much, Jinping. Chinyu took the big bowl of wine, raised his head and poured it down, his deep-set eyes and soul flames soared, and he met Whitebeard's gaze and said, "Okay, the farce is over, then let's get down to business now." Chapter 486 _ You will die soon. Talk about business. Vista couldn't hold back, and took the lead to say, "You guy, what qualifications do you have to talk about business with your father? Don't think that at the beginning. You will offer a reward of 350 million, and you will think like a newcomer that you can be on an equal footing with your father. I'm telling you now, people like you are usually not qualified to meet Dad." The voice of Chang's words echoed on the huge deck. The crew members who were full of resentment at the scene nodded in agreement. Right now, they can't take action to find the place, and they can only discuss Chinyu through their facial expressions. Hee, it turns out that the captain of your Whitebeard Pirates is no different. If you have to use something like a bounty to perfunctory things, doesn't it mean that you value the fire fist like a dead dog over there? See, can you be more powerful than me? Chinyu laughed dryly without emotion. Please remember, don't be too superficial, or you may not even know how you died. You. Vista suddenly gasped. No. It should be said that the captain and even the crew were speechless. Looking at Ace, who fell unconscious, now he can't wait to get up and kick him fiercely. One offered a reward of 350 million, the other offered a reward of 400 million, but the result was subverted. This is undoubtedly irrefutable. Okay, don't interrupt, I also really want to know what he has to say when he is so swaggering and boarded my boat. Whitebeard waved his hand and looked at a group of sons, who was just a teenager, and his heart was full. A bit frustrating indeed. However, his Whitebeard identity is here, if he wants to make a move now. That means that his group of sons are all mediocre. At the same time, it also proved that the big skeleton demon in front of him was looked at by him. Okay, let's see what you can say. If you dare to say nonsense, don't blame us for being rude and screwing your head off. Vista bit Kiba and said. For a time, hundreds of pairs of eyes on the boat fell on Chinyu's body. If it is said that eyes can kill people, then it is enough to kill Chinyu tens of thousands of times now. However, in the face of these murderous gazes, Chinyu didn't seem to take it to heart. After putting down the wine bowl in his hand, he suddenly raised his head. With this calmness, it was almost as if he looked anxious, as if there were still many ants crawling in his heart. Just as he was about to speak to ease the atmosphere, the words that fell in his ears made everyone's pupils shrink suddenly. Whitebeard, you will die soon, Chinyu said indifferently. The small voice, at this moment, is simply very soul-penetrating. The moment they landed on the field, one after another murderous intent exploded like a volcano. Brother Jinbei, you gave it to me, I'm going to abolish this guy today. A low roar sounded suddenly. A murloc figure in casual clothes crossed Jinping first and appeared directly in front of Chinyu. When anger appeared on his hideous face, his 5 fingers suddenly clenched tightly. The arrogant, dare to curse the old man, I will show you today, the murloc is powerful. Murloc Karate Kick Junchen. Bang. The air seemed to be broken by a punch, and there were ripples and shock waves surging along the way. However, in the face of this scene, Chinyu just chuckled, looked up suddenly, the soul flame in his eyes soared, and said, your murloc karate is pretty good, but compared to me, it's a world of difference. The indifferent words made Jin Ping startled for a moment, and then he saw Qin Yu's big, skeletonized hands suddenly clenched tightly. The violent scene made Jinbei's mind flash a very absurd thought. Merman Karate 20,000 watts straight punch. PFF'd. With a punch, the air exploded as if it had been penetrated. The skeleton and white bone fist, with a swift stance like a thunderbolt, took the lead and appeared in front of the fist of the 8th Division Captain Nair. The next moment, when Nair's pupils contracted, they collided. Boom! The thunder-like collision sound resounded suddenly, the violent air waves, like a hurricane, the moment Nair flew backwards like a cannonball. The sound of bones breaking even sounded, which made people feel horrified. The center of the collision between the two, the deck under their feet, made a crisp cracking sound, and the thick deck was cracked and cracked like a spider web. That Nair, Marco, who turned into a phoenix, appeared first behind Nair and stopped him. However, in the face of this violent scene, Jinping's expression is even more indescribable. Not long ago, Qin Yu asked him to instruct fish body art. Now it is possible to perform a 20,000 watts straight punch stronger than that of Nair. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Jinbei would never have believed it. Hee, it seems that we can't reach an agreement. Qin Yu laughed dryly, stood up on the chair as if nothing had happened, and looked at the white beard. However, if one day, when you think you will die, you can still come to me, and I will give you a surprise. Surprise. Vista's face sank, and the captain, whose muscles were already tense behind him, suddenly burst out. Today, we will surprise you. Rose sword break. 6 rounds of artillery. Wind and fire slash. Kill the hammer. Quote. The roar sounded like thunder, one after another. Looking at the crazy attack, the captains who were obviously murderous, Jinping's face changed drastically, and he shouted in a hurry, "Boy, if you don't want to die, hurry down on your knees and admit your mistake, otherwise." The hurried words came out, but unfortunately at the moment when Jinbei turned around. UV rays of light bloomed quickly on Qin Yu's body, and the next moment, the whole person turned into a dazzling light, and he took the lead and went straight to the sky. Second-level magic forced teleportation. Bang! The sky-high rays of light dissipated like dazzling fireworks in the void. Under the pursuit of many eyes, he disappeared without a trace. The violent scene made everyone in the field froze in shock. Whitebeard frowned, observation hockey swept away like a frenzy, and his face couldn't help but sank. That kid has already fled 7 or 8 miles away, it seems that we still underestimate him. 7 or 8 nautical miles in an instant. I'm afraid that even Kizaru can't do it. Joe said in a deep voice. Are we going to chase? After these words fell, everyone looked at Whitebeard. In the face of this big skeleton demon, they also began to wonder. No need, let him go. Whitebeard shook his head in a deep voice and said, I thought I was advancing into the city, but I just walked out of some old rivals to make this sea lively, but I didn't expect a madman to appear. Let the Navy headquarters toss about it. The secrets of Ace still need time to grow up. It's not appropriate to stay here, it's time to go back to the New World. Chapter 487_Miraculous Means. Lieutenant General Bastiu, why don't we retreat? If we continue like this, our defense line will be broken by a steady stream of Sea Kings. A Navy soldier clenched the sword that had been rolled up in his hand, panting. However, what worries them the most is the magic circle that is gradually darkening under their feet. They can clearly feel that the healing effect of this magic circle will decrease as the number of treatments they heal increases. At the same time, the fury of the orcs within them has long since lost its effect. Because of the instant activation of potential, their own muscle fatigue increased even more. It can be said that if it weren't for the existence of this healing magic circle, they would have already been defeated in the endless stream of Sea Kings. Boom! The dull sound of collision resounded, and the huge shark that rushed towards him was cut in half by Bastiu. The hot blood splattered down his face, staining his clothes. The stench came straight into his nostrils, making Bastiu's face, who was already exhausted, even paler. Forcibly regaining his energy, he glanced around and looked at the men who were already starting to lose their strength. A trace of bitterness appeared on Bastiu's face. If the people in the headquarters know about our fleet, they will kill them. With hundreds of sea kings, we can definitely be promoted to an elite fleet. Quote. However, in this situation without support, Yuhi was stained with the blood of the sea kings within a radius of several nautical miles. The pungent bloody smell will only attract more sea kings to come. We simply cannot escape. The only thing I can do is to fight to the death. Quote. At this moment, the small voice shook everyone's nerves like a heavy hammer. Roar. A low roar detonated without warning. The deafening sound waves made the Navy soldiers who had already reached the limit of physical fitness, and even Bastius' mental will cannot help but shake. He looked up in a hurry, and the moment he entered his eyes almost split. Yes, it is a super sea king. Boom. The huge body is tens of meters in length, and the moment it broke through the water, it caused a stench, and the open mouth was 7 or 8 meters huge. This mouthful, I am afraid it is enough to bite off the warship. However, in the face of this violent scene, Bastius and a group of Navy soldiers who were present were already approaching the limit. The scene in front of them made their only remaining fighting spirit disappear. The only thing I can do is to watch, and the blood basin bites down. Are you going to die? Ridiculous thoughts sprouted in everyone's mind. However, a blood-colored light descended on the deck first. The gray-white skeleton and the soul flame bursting out from the sunken eyes, at this moment, seems to give people a soul-like illusion. Facing the incoming super sea kings, Chinyu just looked up slightly. I didn't expect to see this kind of cute sea kings in such a place, just to be able to come in handy. A small voice suddenly sounded. Compared with the fierce attacks of the super sea kings, Chinyu's indifference and calmness formed a huge gap. Before everyone could react, the incoming blood basin fell with a bang. Boom. The dull collision sound resounded like thunder. The huge body seemed to hit an invisible wall 7 or 8 meters away from Chinyu. The next moment, before everyone could react, the scepter in Chinyu's hand suddenly stomped on the ground. Third order magic negative contact. Boom. The scepter stomped down toward the deck, and Yuhi's magic circle bloomed under Chinyu's feet. The dark magic detonated in Chinyu's body, and it rolled back like a frenzy. Roar. A terrifying roar erupted like thunder. In the pupils of the Super Sea Kings, a trace of humanized panic flashed. Unfortunately, before he could react, the huge body seemed to be corroded. A body of flesh and blood instantly collapsed between heaven and earth. The tens of meters of huge gray-white bones were smashed into the sea weakly under the watchful eyes of the public. The splashing sea water rolled back around like a huge wave. The Sea Kings, who had been rushing back and forth, witnessed this scene, and there was a bit of stagnation one after another. The next moment, he turned around and ran away without looking back. For a time, they were still fighting frantically, and the Sea Kings who regarded this ship as their prey were directly frightened. God, what did I see? Are these Sea Kings scared? The adjutant standing beside Bastius turned pale and couldn't help but mutter to himself. The atmosphere in the field suddenly became extremely depressing. I'm afraid this is the king of the Sea King in this sea area. Bastiu's expression changed, and he hurriedly explained. However, in the face of the unclear situation in front of him, Bastiu still tightened his nerves, clenched the shark-slashing sword in his hand, and stared straight at the unfathomable skeleton demon in front of him. Although, after a lot of things, Bastiu knew that he was not the opponent of this devil, but it seemed that only in this way could he have a sense of security. Hee, I didn't expect you to survive. Chin-Yu chuckled indifferently, holding the scepter in his hand, looked back and said, 7 people were seriously injured, all of them were slightly injured, and none of them died. Your record is better than I expected, and the harvest is also quite good. There is no need to do the next time for the time being. Next time. A small voice swept the audience like a hurricane at this moment. The faces of the Navy soldiers who survived by chance, and even Bastio's face suddenly turned pale. Demon, you demon, kill if you want, there's no need to torture us like this. Bastiu growled angrily. Demon. Chin-Yu laughed dryly and said, I said, demons and skeletons are 2 different types, but I appreciate your courage. Seeing that you have completed the task well, I still need some manpower to control the ship, and the task is over. Level 3 Magic, Group Healing. The scepter in Chin-Yu's hand stomped toward the deck again. The blue misty magic circle bloomed, and those healing light rains fell turbulently. A feeling like bathing in warm Izumi made Bastiu and the others look stagnant, and the tiredness in their bodies, although they did not receive the baptism of light and rain for the first time, disappeared quickly. But the wound and physical strength are obviously slowly recovering. Feeling the changes in his body, the adjutant standing behind Bastius couldn't help but looked up at the sky and muttered, no matter how many times I see it, this kind of weird method is like a miracle. A person with this ability may be able to turn the tide of various battles. Chapter 488 ants can't understand the thoughts of rulers. Shut up. Bastiu backhanded, slapped the adjutant directly behind him in the face, and shouted sternly, you know, if this is known to the headquarters, what awaits you is not only punishment, but also fear. Even the betrayer will deal with it. Quote. I'm afraid we'll be implicated too. Faced with the robbery of gold in the sky, at such a sensitive time, this kind of admiration for the other party was raised. Undoubtedly, it has given some hostile people a breakthrough in the topic of targeting. For example, colluding with outsiders to lead to the robbing of gold in the sky and other sensitive topics. Listening to these words, the adjutant obviously knew that he had lost his way, and quickly nodded in agreement. However, more eyes were cast on Chin-Yu, who was staring straight at the Sea King like corpses all over the sea. Well, you guys seem to be too busy. I'll help you to clean up all these corpses. Chin-Yu touched his chin and said after thinking for a while. You need these corpses. Bastiu was stunned for a moment, and said, do you want all of them? What are you doing here? Our ship has enough food storage, and some of these Sea King's flesh contains toxins. In Bastiu's eyes, these Sea Kings were headache-inducing attackers. At most, after death, it is only reduced to rations. You said they were food. Chin-Yu turned back and laughed loudly. The ants really can't understand the thoughts of the Supreme Ruler. I am the Supreme Being of the Great Tomb of Narisox, how could I not have a subordinate? Subordinate. Bastiu's expression froze, and he said, are you planning to use these corpses to create subordinates? Absurd thoughts sprouted in Bastius' mind, looking at the Sea King corpse floating on the sea. This is something completely irrelevant. Hee, you can't figure out the means of the Supreme Being. All you have to do is obey the order. The scepter in Chin-Yu's hand suddenly stomped towards the deck. The violent magic power exploded instantly in the body, sweeping the entire sea like a hurricane. The Navy soldier who was in it, his muscles suddenly tensed, and he couldn't help but shudder. Bastiu's face changed drastically. He hurriedly bit Kiba and said, come on, as long as the body recovers, I'll come here and transport all those corpses over. The weak have no diplomacy. Facing Chin-Yu's crushing strength, the only thing Bastiu could do was to bite the bullet and execute it. At the same time, like other Navy soldiers, they were eager to know how the skeleton demon in front of them could use these corpses to become their subordinates. Looking at the Navy soldiers who suddenly became busy, Chinyu did not continue to urge. The soul flame in his eyes dimmed a little, and he fell into contemplation. According to the current 40% fidelity, Chinyu's means have also been reduced. If you want to create long-lasting undead, you need a lot of fresh and strong corpses, and the Sea King is undoubtedly the best choice. Among them, the Bone King's own top undead Archmage's talent. In one day, 4 high-level undead, 12 middle-level undead, and 20 low-level undead can be created. As for the undead magic, the Cemetery of the Dead, it can produce 500 skeleton soldiers of no level. Looking at the data in front of him, Chinyu frowned even more. Recalling the original Bone King's book, the mighty golden armored skeleton formation alone was enough to shock many people. At present, with Chinyu's strength and means, to reach this point, there is obviously still a big gap. However, to deal with the next plan, it is enough. Has the corpse arrived? Chinyu returned to his senses and followed the sea. It may be difficult to deal with living sea kings, but in the face of these corpses floating on the sea, these naval soldiers are equally efficient. After all, this is about their lives, and at the same time, they are eager to know why the skeleton demon in front of them said that these corpses were his subordinates. The nearby salvage has been completed, and there are still 1/10 of the corpse. In the farther sea, it will take some time. Bastius didn't want to obey Chinyu's order. But now facing Chinyu's fierce power, he can only temporarily surrender. Chinyu didn't take Bastius' thoughts to heart. He just raised his head slightly and looked at the corpses that had been piled up on the sea. The scepter in Chinyu's hand stomped again. Second level magic. Frozen earth. Boom. The endless cold air exploded in an instant like a frenzy, and quickly rolled back around. Wherever he passed, let alone the deck, the sea surface with a radius of 500 to 600 meters was instantly frozen. Before Bastiu waited for the navy to react, Chinyu once again applied a flying magic to himself, quickly suspended in midair, and flew towards the corpse on the ice. The violent scene made Bastiu and the others couldn't help but give a cold shock, looking at the scene in front of them, showing surprise. Also followed in a hurry. Looking at Chinyu's endless means, there was an inexplicable urgency in their hearts. I am eager to see how the corpse in front of me can become a soldier. Let me think about where to start. Chinyu rubbed his chin and muttered to himself. The next moment, the soul flame in his eyes suddenly soared, and the scepter in his hand slammed towards the ice, indifferently. The voice sounded again. Then start with the weak. Level 3 Undead Magic, Cemetery of the Dead. When? The sound of the magic circle sounded like a bell, and a purple-black magic circle was quickly constructed under Chinyu's feet. The inexplicable depressing breath contained in the magic, like an invisible big hand, clenched the heart of the navy present. Looking at the gradually darkening sky, some people couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva. However, before they could react, an exclamation suddenly sounded. Those corpses are moving. The unpredictable voice made everyone's nerves tense at once. When carrying these corpses, it was confirmed again and again that these sea kings were dead. The sudden movement now undoubtedly caught their attention. When Chi Shushua's eyes fell on the piled-up corpses, the moment the pupils contracted, the eye sockets almost split. On the wriggling corpse, a boneless skeleton hand protruded from the flesh and blood. The thin and small skeletons that were pulled out were densely packed, and there were so many in number, and when they moved, there was a crunching sound of cracking bones all over the body, forming a shocking scene. I wonder who has seen it. Hundreds of skeletons that are uniform and form a phalanx, marching in the pace of military exercises. Although, in his hand, he was just holding a bone knife that came with him. However, these lineups and means are completely beyond their cognition. Oh my God, if our naval headquarters has this kind of means, I'm afraid we don't need soldiers to act as cannon fodder. Bastiu couldn't help but spit out a sentence. It's just that the voice fell, and the adjutant's slap was called. Chapter 489 _ Legion of Death. Pop. The crisp slaps echoed suddenly, making Bastius unable to help, covering his cheeks, stunned in place, and the words that fell in his ears seemed very familiar. Lieutenant General Bastius, this is a rebellious speech, you can't say it. Feeling the burning sensation on the old face, if it wasn't for seeing the loyal adjutant, Bastius almost couldn't help it and pulled back. Bastiu, as Vice Admiral, come and test the strength of these Mukuro soldiers. Chinyu suddenly spoke up. Knowing yourself and knowing your enemy can win 100 battles. Although, this densely packed Mukuro bone soldier looks very good. However, if it's just a pretense, Chinyu doesn't need to waste his magic power and thoughts on it. I'm coming. Bastiu couldn't help but startled. However, after seeing Chinyu's unquestionable nod, he suppressed the shock in his heart and looked at the Mukuro bone soldiers holding gray and white bone knives. There was also a feeling of Yuyu wanting to try in my heart. In Bastiu's eyes, if he could figure out the strength of these Mukuro soldiers, it would not be a credit to the Navy headquarters. What's the matter, don't you want to? Chinyu said again. Yes, I do, Bastiu hurriedly responded. After picking up the strength to recover a little, his hands suddenly clenched the shark-slashing sword tightly, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, and the next moment his feet suddenly exerted force and swept away towards the Mukuro bone soldier. Shark-slashing 6 light flow slash. The roar suddenly rose, and before Bastius fell, the shark-slashing knife in his hand instantly slashed 6 knives. When the awe-inspiring sound of breaking the air sounded, the vacuum slashes condensed in an instant, and with a rolling posture, they slashed towards the Mukuro bone soldier. In the face of this blow that showed most of their strength, these Mukuro bone soldiers who only had a simple will, simply raised the bone knife in their hands to block. Bang! The slash fell suddenly, and the huge impact, mixed with a fierce and incomparable gesture, directly tore 50 or 60 Mukuro soldiers to shreds in an instant. Seeing the bones scattered all over the place as if they had fallen apart, the naval soldiers present couldn't help but froze in place. Bastiu also looked a little surprised, but a smile flashed on his face. Sir, I'm sorry, I didn't know, the soldiers you created are so weak, if you had told me earlier, they would even kill me. The group of useless people under my team is not as good, and I will never play such a heavy hand. Quote. In the beginning, he was really serious about Chinyu's method of using corpses to create soldiers. However, it has been personally verified that these Mukuro bone soldiers, even with his slightly more serious tricks, have swept dozens of people, which is an opportunity for him to counterattack. At least, in front of this terrifying guy, he can pull back a city. However, this thought just flashed in Bastius's mind, and the words that fell in his ear made him bewildered. Well, if your navy can't even compare to my most unprofessional cannon fodder, your navy will have no value to survive. Chinyu played with the scepter in his hand. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, he suddenly stomped towards the ice layer. The bones that had fallen apart and fell to the ground were quickly reassembled under the light of Yuhi the gorilla, as if controlled by an invisible force. The sudden scene shook everyone's nerves, and even Bastius couldn't help but take a half step back. Okay, let's go to the next stage of the experiment. Chinyu's voice sounded again. Also, Bastiu's face changed slightly. However, before he could investigate further, the scepter in Chinyu's hand stomped again towards the ice layer. Gorilla Yuhi was instantly dyed black, and the thick fog was as black as ink. At this moment, it was like turning into thousands of tentacles, frantically poking at the pile of Sea King corpses. As soon as it was touched, the magic circle was like a bloody mouth that quickly devoured the corpse. Just a short moment, streaks of Gorilla Yuhi's blood appeared again. The huge magic circle was like a quagmire, with a lot of bubbles emerging. In the end, there were 23rd Order skeleton warriors wearing white bone armor, huge, close to 3 meters, holding weapons that exuded gray light and white bone shields. Immediately after, there were 12 level 6 undead knights riding on white bone skeleton horses and wearing bone armor. However, as the Sea King corpses piled up like a hill were swallowed up, even the last tail of the Super Sea King was pulled in by the black mist. 4 huge rays of light, Jinchuriki column, soared into the sky like a horse. The lead cloud in the backlogged sky was pierced in an instant. One after another soared into the sky in the magic circle, as if controlled by an invisible force, formed in the blink of an eye, with 4 heads and a body of 20 or 30 meters in length, and a 7th-order undead bone dragon braving black fog. Roar! The sound of the dragon's roar exploded like thunder, and the rolling sound waves rolled back like a frenzy. At this moment, the ice surface under his feet, as if unbearable, made a cracking sound. A pair of bone wings, at the moment when they suddenly fanned, the wind and waves rolled up, it felt like a hurricane. Facing this unexpected scene, some Navy soldiers could not stand firm at all. It was directly overturned 7 or 8 meters away and hit the deck of the hull, only to be able to barely stop it. However, in the face of the tingling sensation from all over, the naval soldiers present, and even Bastius. At this moment, he couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva. Looking at the black bone dragon flying high in the sky, and the undead knight riding a bone skeleton horse in front of him. And those skeleton warriors who are wearing bone armor and are nearly 3 meters tall. This lineup and momentum, the inexplicable oppressive power that exudes, is like an invisible big hand clenching people's hearts. Mukuro bone soldiers in the previous moment were just stragglers. Then these bone legions in front of them give the impression that they are simply an elite death legion. I said, Bastius, how do you think the current army is compared to your naval headquarters? Chinyu said indifferently. The small voice, but at this moment, has the ability to penetrate the soul, which simply shakes everyone's nerves. Especially at the moment when the voice fell, the 4 giant bone dragons in the sky cast the gaze of Yuhi the gorilla, which made people tremble. At this moment, a very ridiculous idea flashed in their minds. These legions of the dead, they are invincible. Puff! The sound of heavy objects falling to the ground reverberated. Bastius looked back at the adjutant who knelt down without hesitation. That crazy move spread like a chain reaction at this moment. Before Bastiu could react, a chorus of shouts suddenly resounded. Thank you, the Supreme Being of the Great Tomb of Narasak, for letting us see the supreme glory of the Death Corps, our naval headquarters, an unmatched elite corps. Chapter 490 Destination Chambord Islands. The screams that sounded in unison echoed like thunder. Bastiu looked at the elite subordinate who fell to the ground instantly, and he was suddenly in a trance. What's the matter, Bastiu? Do you want to try the power of my subordinates? Are you going to pick 100 or 100 this time? Chinyu said indifferently, his deep-set eyes, that jumping the soul flame suddenly soared. His eyes turned in vain and landed on Bastius. This glance seemed ordinary, but in Bastius's eyes, it seemed to have the oppressive force of Mount High, which made his muscles tensed all of a sudden. When he thought of the comments that Heiko said just now, he couldn't wait to slap his mouth. However, when he thought that he was a dignified lieutenant general, in front of this group of men, Bastius still bit his head and said, Lord Ains, please forgive my reckless words just now. However, as a vice admiral of the Navy headquarters, the cloak of justice on my back does not allow me to kneel. If you want to take off the head on my neck, just take it. The slightly elusive words, mixed with awe-inspiring taste, made the expressions of the Navy soldiers in the field change slightly. All eyes fell on Chinyu. It can be said that Bastiu's behavior now is undoubtedly hitting the muzzle. Haha, courage is commendable, Chinyu said with a dry smile. As soon as he stepped down, he disappeared in place like a ghost with the help of a shaver. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Bastius. The violent scene made Bastius' expression change drastically, even his breathing stopped suddenly, and his muscles tense instantly. A big white-boned hand has been gently tapped on his shoulder. I still need you as a guide for the next journey. As long as you reach your destination, your actions satisfy me. It's not an extravagant hope to leave alive. Keep working hard, Chinyu said with a warm smile. However, the skeleton-like posture that fell in their eyes gave people a terrifying feeling. When the voice faded away, the footsteps moved away. And the army of death in the field merged into the magic circle like a black fog. Bastius was like a drowning man, unable to fall on the ice, gasping for breath. Lieutenant General Bastius, are you okay? The adjutant couldn't help but asked. However, as soon as the words fell, he was stunned and shouted angrily, do you think I'm fine? Don't you pull me up quickly, my feet are shaking. The hysterical roar echoed on the ice for a long time and there was no way to do it. It's just the Navy soldiers in the field, but there is no way to laugh. When he remembered the Battle of the Death Army just now, the adjutant couldn't help but said, Lieutenant General Bastiou, you said that the strength of the 4 bone dragons can reach. As soon as these words fell, everyone's nerve strings were tickled. Feeling the gazes around him, Bastiou's face was solemn, and he said, I don't know what means it has. But the pressure it gives me may be tricky. At the same time, in the naval headquarters, in the marshal's office, Sengoku stood with his hands behind his back, standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking at the distant port, the several warships that were already ready to go. His face sank. Isn't Bastius whereabouts yet? It's been a whole day. Garp's lazy voice sounded suddenly. Don't forget to stuff a few donuts in your mouth. Looking at Garp so laid back, Sengoku's face darkened again and again, and said, Cap, can't you have dessert? Until now, we don't have the exact information about the master. At the thought of advancing into the city, Magellan reported on the intelligence list. All of the above are listed as unknown, and Sengoku seems to have a headache. Che, you said you didn't know, could I be able to know? Garp couldn't help but rolled his eyes and said, but Akainu and Kayabu, aren't those 2 little devils back? They are all up-and-coming stars, just let them check it out. What's the headache for you? It's hard to say. That guy stole the gold from the sky, just planning to find a place to hide. Maybe he has managed to return to the New World now. New World. Sengoku's expression couldn't help but startled. Immediately, he grabbed the phone bug on the table and said, Cap, you're right. If that guy wants to return to Wano, he must first pass through the continent of Yuhi. Don't forget, there is only one stupid way for pirates to go to Yuhi soil here. Stupid way. Garp was stunned for a moment, and then his eyes lit up. Sengoku, you mean, that guy is going to go to the Chambord Islands to coat and use the Fishman Island to return to the New World? However, there are too many illegal places in the Chambord archipelago, and only half of the ports our navy is stationed in. I'm afraid this is a bit difficult, right? Because the Yuhi soil continent is like a sharp blade, the Great Waterway is cut off. The Yuhi continent is the place occupied by the world government, and even the nobles and other powerful countries. Therefore, the only option for pirates is to cross the Fishman Island to reach the New World through the seabed of 10,000 meters. In this process, the Chambord Islands became the most important springboard. Historically, the Navy headquarters, and even the world government, also thought about banning this place directly. However, losing the final route to the New World will soon spark a conflict between the two sides. In the face of the guerrilla warfare of pirates, not to mention the Navy, even the world government could not help but consume. In the end, some parts of the Chambord Islands became a no-holds-barred zone. As long as nothing too outrageous is done, the Navy will turn a blind eye. At present, the Navy headquarters defines Uchiha Chinyu as a person from Wano Kingdom. When returning to Wano, the Chambord Islands will be the only way to go. Come here, immediately notify Kizaru and Akainu, and rush to the Chambord Islands as soon as possible, hoping to block him directly before he enters the deep sea. Whether it is the escape from the city or the plunder of gold in the sky, all these things need someone. Take responsibility. Sengoku directly dialed the phone bug and gave the order in a deep voice. At the same time, it is similar to the Sengoku conjecture. A ship carrying gold from the sky quickly approached the Chambord Islands. The pirates along the way, as well as some navies, took the initiative to retreat when they saw the Tianlong people flags fluttering in the wind. However, when they looked at this huge merchant ship, it actually detoured around the regular port and sailed towards the dark and deserted estuary. His expression suddenly became stiff. However, in the face of this kind of thing related to the Tianlong people, they just took one more look and retracted their minds. Before landing on the Chambord Islands, they were given their first warning. Never take action against Tianlong people. Chapter 491 I just came back from the robbery. Lord Ains, where are you planning to go now? Bastiu, who was standing on the bow, nervously wiped the hot sweat on his forehead, and subconsciously clenched the phone bug hidden in his sleeve. During this time, he has been looking for opportunities to tip off. However, since the Death Legion was created, the merchant ship seems to be isolated from the world, and the signal of the phone bug is also cut off. Chinyu regained his senses in deep thought, and in his deep-set eyes, the flame of his soul jumped and said, "Don't worry, you have performed well during this time, and I will not kill you. As for the phone bug you tipped off, you don't need to use it anymore. I believe the Navy will arrive soon." As soon as these words fell, let alone Bastius, even the faces of the Navy soldiers suddenly changed drastically. They are very clear about Bastius's obscure actions. It just didn't occur to Chinyu that all of this could be seen by Chinyu. That fearless attitude shook their nerves even more. What are you going to do?" Bastiu asked urgently with a worried expression. It can be said that the unknown is the most tormenting mental skill, especially when looking at this unfathomable skeleton monster that was miscalculated by the Navy headquarters. On a single pair, the soul flame pupils in the eye sockets have a kind of spiritual oppression that can be seen through. Hee, don't be nervous, you can just follow me. As for the others, take a nap first. Chinyu laughed dryly. The next moment, the soul flame in the eyes suddenly rose, as if it was about to burn out. A huge wave of mental pressure, with a tyrannical attitude, swept the audience. Undead talent spiritual shock. Boom. The Navy soldiers present only felt a roar in their minds, and before they could react, they turned over by Akugan, foaming at the mouth and lying on the deck. As an undead archmage, the Bone King's mental strength is so powerful that it can be compared to an ordinary conqueror's haki. Looking at it for a while, he fell down, even the adjutant beside him was no exception. Just as Bastius dispelled the discomfort in his mind, his face suddenly turned pale. "Lord Ains, what are you going to do?" "What are you doing?" Chinyu put away the enormous mental power he had released, looked back at Bastiu and said, "Of course it is to give me Ains our Gong's fame and time to set up a bureau. Next, you should be familiar with the Chambord Islands, so be my guide." Abandoning these words, Chinyu's gaze had already crossed Bastius's body and landed on the humble tavern on the coast. The soul flame in his eyes flickered slightly, and it was buckled on Bastius's body, disappearing on the deck like a ghost. When he appeared again, Bastius had already seen himself and appeared in front of the tavern. Bang! The door of the tavern was kicked open in response, and even the door panel was directly knocked into the air with a huge force. I saw a black shadow flying towards Chinyu like a cannonball. Seeing this sudden scene, Bastius was startled at first, but in the end he bit Kiba and stepped forward to block it. Bang! The dull collision sound echoed in the forest. After seeing the appearance of the unlucky ghost who flew out diagonally, Bastille couldn't help but stagnate. This is a bounty of 80 million, a pirate from the West Sea, Ols. He was shot out directly by someone. Qin Yu was not surprised by Bastille's shock. 13 of the Chambord Islands, a place of lawlessness. In this chaotic and strife-Chambord archipelago, someone who can do such a thing. In addition to Rayleigh's care, of course, there is also the reason for the existence of the owner's own strength. At least, according to Qin Yu's calculations, Shachi was originally a pirate, and was hunted down by the naval hero Capman Hai 30 years ago. Moreover, at the moment when the supernova landed on the island, a large amount of intelligence information can be collected, which is enough to prove that she is not simple. If Qin Yu was forced to come to a conclusion, this Shachi might have something to do with the legendary pirate group Rocks. However, after many years, the reputation of all this has gradually faded. At the moment, Shachi is only operating in the Chambord Islands to introduce coding, rip off, and sell information for a living. Of course, looking at her posture, the most important thing is to rip her off. Your Excellency Ains, I'm afraid this tavern is not easy. What are you doing here? I might be able to arrange it for you. Bastius couldn't help but said. He didn't want to let Qin Yu change his mind and kill him halfway through. What's more, as a navy, if you come to this kind of black shop, if you are ambushed. It was a mortal situation. Lieutenant General Bastille, only she can do what I want to do. You'd better go in and relax with me. Qin Yu patted Bastille on the shoulder and walked in first. Facing the mysterious Qin Yu, Bastille couldn't help but grow a seed of curiosity in his heart. In his eyes, Qin Yu tacitly allowed him to tip off the Navy headquarters. Knowing that the Chambord archipelago and the Navy headquarters are only separated by a port in the waters, they have to stay here. All kinds of actions made Bastius eager to know what Qin Yu was thinking or planning to do. When the remaining wooden doors were pushed open by Qin Yu's huge body of white bones. Welcome light. Shachi, who was wiping the cup, raised her head slightly, but her pupils suddenly contracted. However, he quickly regained his calm and said, you should have seen the end of the man just now. This is a tavern that specializes in ripping things off. You have to be mentally prepared. My asking price is very high. Looking at Shachi, who was straight to the point and said such harsh words at the beginning, Bastille's expression changed slightly, and he looked at Qin Yu beside him. He wanted to know how this moody skeleton demon would react. Hee, Miss Shachi, you're still funny, but I like to talk to cheerful people. Qin Yu sat down on the slightly smaller bar chair. With his bone-like fingers, he clicked on the table and said, do you want 1 million or 10 million Baileys? I just came back from the robbery, and the ship carrying the gold in the sky is still outside. If you don't think it's hot, you can have it all. Quote. Domineering. At this moment, Bastille was the only word that came out of his mind. No matter whether Qin Yu is talking nonsense or not, a mouth is gold in the sky. Who can do this kind of thing? Faced with these words, Shachi's eyes narrowed slightly, obviously a little surprised. However, he recovered quickly and said, it seems that it is a distinguished guest, and the pirates are accompanied by a navy. This combination is also surprising. It seems that your plot is not small. However, seeing as you are also refreshing, let's drink something first. Chapter 492 No, I'm here just to find Rayleigh. Qin Yu said indifferently. Rayleigh. Bastille was stunned at first. Obviously for a while, he couldn't think of who the owner of this name was. However, these words fell in Shachi's ears, but her expression changed slightly. She looked at Qin Yu with a little more vigilance, and said, I don't know what Rayleigh is. If you are looking for this person, I'm sorry I can't help you. If nothing happens, I'm going to close. As soon as these words fell, Shachi clearly issued an order to evict the guests, which made Bastille stunned in place. After all, this attitude change, the gap between before and after is too big. Hee, Miss Shachi, you don't have to reject me too quickly. Take a look at this letter of introduction first. I believe you will be happy to help me. Chinyu laughed dryly, took out his mother-in-law's handwritten letter, and pushed it directly past. When she saw the mark and name on it, Shachi couldn't help but stunned, and said with a slightly unfortunate tone, "It was introduced by the old woman, but can you show your true face?" For this man who was named by the Navy headquarters as the mastermind of the city's jailbreak, at the moment when the reward of 350 million was announced. Shachi also did not believe that her intelligence system did not have any information on this person. Being able to meet now makes Shachi aroused, urgent curiosity. Too young, Shachi suddenly muttered uncontrollably. Watching Chinyu, who finally returned to his original appearance under the dark mist, gave off the feeling of a teenager next door, obviously exceeding her expectations. "Are you satisfied?" Chinyu said with a warm smile. After removing the character template, Chinyu was not affected by the character of the Bone King, and returned to his usual character. Shachi regained her senses, took a deep breath with a cigarette in her mouth, and said, "It's a bit of a surprise. I didn't expect the rumored skeleton demon to be so young. However, I'd like to know how long you've been in the city grand prison and what did you do to get in?" Faced with this question, even Bastiu, who was standing behind Chinyu, became interested. Feeling the curious eyes of the two, Chinyu smiled and shook his head. "I don't even know myself, can you change the question? For example, do you want to find out my details and introduce me to a blind date?" Cut. Shachi rolled her eyes and said, "I already knew you would answer this way, but, as a qualified intelligence businessman, I also violated the iron rule that I can't casually investigate customers. As a sign of my apologies, I honestly tell you that I don't know where Rayleigh is." "You don't know." Bastius was anxious. He followed Chinyu's side in order to buy time for the Navy. However, if Chinyu couldn't find the person he was looking for, it meant that he might leave the Chambord Islands at any time. "I really don't know." Shachi spit out a cigarette, glanced at Bastiu, and said, "That guy is always hiding from creditors. He was approached a few days ago. Now he should hide and avoid debts." Quote. "However, little brother, you carry a navy with you, are you not worried about him tipping off? It's very close to the navy here." As soon as these words fell, Bastiu's face changed drastically, and he gave Shachi a vicious look as a warning. However, he was quickly interrupted by Chinyu. "Be careful, this shop is not an existence you can threaten. But don't worry, I'm taking you because I'm not famous enough." Not famous enough. The inexplicable words made Bastiu and Shachi startled. People are afraid of being famous and pigs are afraid of being strong. This principle applies everywhere. Especially pirates, who would like to be stared at in this Chambord archipelago. In their eyes, if the navy is provoked over, they can't eat Kabuto and go. "By the way, since you don't know where Rayleigh is, then help me do another thing." Chinyu took out a photo with his backhand and threw it to Shachi. "Help me spread the news. The most important thing is good news through the hands of Morgans. As for the cost, this information should be enough for you to knock down Bailey in Morgan's mouth." "You mean Morgans?" Shachi frowned and said, "That guy, but he only does big news. Two small things, I'm afraid." Before the words were finished, when Shachi and Bastiu saw the scene in the photo, their pupils shrank suddenly. It can be said that at this moment, he almost split his eyes. This is the first supernova, the captain of the Spade Pirates, Fire Fist Ace. Bastiu's expression changed drastically, and he couldn't help but exclaimed anxiously. As a vice admiral, how many people want to catch this new pirate who is in the limelight? However, the only thing that makes people feel difficult is that the strength of this pirate newcomer is as high as his bounty. Moreover, in the naval headquarters, there are even more rumors that the secret identity of this pirate newcomer is not simple. However, now this unruly rookie pirate king who claims to challenge Whitebeard has been trampled underfoot. If you didn't see it with your own eyes, I'm afraid no one would want to believe that all this is true. Boy, I didn't expect you to defeat him. If Rayleigh knew, he didn't know what his expression would be. Shachi took a deep breath of cigarette and looked at Chin-Yu in shock. I'd love to know, though, why are you doing this? Is fame important to you? In the face of these tentative words, Chin-Yu smiled warmly and nodded silently. Everything he is doing now is just to make the world more turbulent because of him, thereby unlocking his own power. However, such words are obviously impossible to say. Even if it is said, I am afraid no one will believe it. Well, it seems that in your mouth, there is no way to get some news. I will send this information to you. As compensation, the reward for the information sale will be mine. This should be able to become the front page of the news, and I will give you the title as well. After thinking about it, I will call you the King of Newcomers. Shachi gave up the idea of continuing to test, and took another cigarette. But Rayleigh's whereabouts are up to you. There is one more thing. I need to remind you that in the Chambord Islands, you can beat up the Navy at will, but once you encounter the world nobles Tianlong people, you must not conflict with them, when necessary, but early leave. The slightly erratic instructions echoed in the small tavern, and there was no way to disperse for a long time. However, in the face of these remarks, Chin-Yu just raised his hand at will, turned around and left first. I see, I won't conflict with them. Chapter 493 _ Personal Visit and Supreme Command. There won't be a conflict. Shachi thought about it carefully when she saw the back figure disappearing at the door, but her expression changed in vain after this sentence. That kid just kept saying that he wanted to gain fame. Wouldn't he be crazy enough to do that kind of thing? It doesn't matter, my mother is busy enough today, and there is also the money sold by this information. This store is temporarily closed for a few days, and it's better to hide. Shachi guessed a little about Chin-Yu's thoughts. When she was young, when she was chased by the Sea of Capman, her appearance also changed dramatically. However, if such a thing really happens right now, the frequency of the Navy coming to search is definitely not small. Not to mention the pirates on the island, I am afraid that even the outsiders will be unlucky. So, under this premise, if you can't find anyone to knock on this tavern, it's better to close the door rashly. Now Shachi can only pray that Rayleigh will not meet this arrogant person. Just thinking of Rayleigh, where he might be hiding now, Shachi sighed helplessly and quickly closed the door. Outside, Bastiu looked at Chin-Yu's back and became more and more uneasy. Recalling the day before, Chin-Yu left halfway, probably with Fire Fist Ace. Otherwise, if this was old news, it wouldn't have come out so late. Moreover, seeing that Chin-Yu was so obsessed with fame, it further confirmed Bastiu's guess. Hey, show me the way, I'm going to island number 1. Chin-Yu said lightly. He is generally clear about the division of the Chambord Islands, but if he really wants to say how to go, it will be difficult for Chin-Yu. Island number 1. Ains Lord, aren't you leaving? Bastiu woke up with surprise on his face. Let's go. Chin-Yu rolled his eyes and said, I haven't been found yet, so how could I go, let alone do you want to see me go? No. Bastius waved his hand quickly and said, Lord Ains, you misunderstood me, I have absolutely no other ideas, I will lead the way now. However, who exactly is Rayleigh whom Ains Lord is looking for? At the same time, just as Chin-Yu was heading to island number 1. In the estuary guarded by the Navy, 2 warships with the highest specifications were ushered in. One after another, the dark gun barrels glowed with a terrifying cold light. The naval soldiers stationed on the deck were even more orderly, like an elite division among the elite. The fire burned General Yamanaka, what is going on? An adjutant looked at the two warships in front of him and couldn't help but said, "Isn't this a warship specially equipped by the generals? How can two generals descend on Chambord at the same time? Islands." As an admiral of the navy, he is known as the existence of the highest combat power. Usually, if there is no major incident, they are stationed in the naval headquarters, chatting and drinking tea. There is only Aokiji, who does not like this kind of restrained and boring life, but runs to the sea to perform ice cycling. As the closest to the Navy headquarters and the most important springboard for the pirates, the Chambord Islands have always been entrusted to the mid-future of the Navy. As for the general, rarely set foot in this place at all. In their eyes, this kind of place where the pirates and the Navy have their own hands in the chaos, they are upset when they look at it. However, as soon as he appeared, he found that two generals were coming to visit, which was like a mountain and rain. "Fire General Yamanaka, do you think there will be escapees to the Chambord archipelago? I heard that the Chanda prison was occupied not long ago, and the three generals were dispatched in person." The adjutant couldn't help but said. Huo Shaoshan's face changed slightly, and he said with a cigar, "Shut up, don't make random guesses here. If the military is in chaos, I will ask for you." However, these two generals came at an untimely time. Not long ago, I received the highest notice. Highest notice. The adjutant's expression changed drastically. As long as he was stationed in the Chambord Islands, he would definitely know what the highest notification was. Now all of a sudden, two major events collided, which gave Huo Shaoshan a headache. "Forget it, don't care." Huo Shaoshan's face flashed a trace of displeasure. "The two warships are about to dock, let's figure out what happened first." Abandoning these words, Huo Shaoshan walked quickly to the port. As soon as they approached, the two warships had already erected the bridge, and the leader was a Kainu wearing a cigar and wearing a cloak of justice. There is also a wretched and abusive Kizaru, pouting and looking around. "Yo, it seems that my old face is still useful. Isn't this Huo Shaoshan? I asked you to pick us up in person, but I'm sorry." Huang Yuan's eyes fell on Huo Shaoshan, and he was the first to speak. "Did Marshal Sengoku inform you?" "Marshal Sengoku?" Huo Shaoshan couldn't help but froze for a moment, then shook his head blankly and said, "Two generals, Marshal Sengoku didn't inform me of anything. We gathered here to meet the Supreme Order." However, the two generals came here in person. Could it be that something really happened to the Chambord Islands? Having said that, all the following naval soldiers suddenly tensed their nerves. Most of the naval soldiers stationed on the warship that Akainu and Kizaru were on also showed blank expressions. "That old guy Sengoku is really..." Akainu spit out a cigarette and said, "This is top secret. You don't know, it's not wrong. If we let that guy escape, it would be a waste of our time." "As the highest order you received to receive world nobles." Akainu and Kizaru, who are generals of the world nobles, are not unfamiliar. At the moment when they became generals, the first task was no matter where they were, what happened. It must be his duty to protect the nobles of the world first. However, in the face of that group of pedantic guys, Akainu and Kyabu obviously didn't intend to be pugs with their tails wagging their tails. Looking at Akainu and Kizaru who wanted to leave immediately, Huo Shaoshan smiled helplessly. As lieutenant generals, they didn't have so many choices. "Fire General Yamanaka, Lord Charles Marco, here they come." A Navy soldier hurried over. "Charles Marco." Akainu frowned and said, "Is it a rumor, that pervert who likes slave fighting?" "Yes, that's the one. I heard that he was looting, and the devil fruits sent by the major allied countries were sent to the slaves to eat, in order to increase the fun of fighting." Huo Shaoshan said with a wry smile. Now, he feels that his luck is a little bit back. The guy who makes someone a slave when he opens his mouth. This shows that the next guard is not easy. Hee, Huo Shaoshan, you don't have to look distressed. This Tianlong person has a special status, and no one dares to shoot him anywhere. We have been generals for so many years, and we have never met a guy who doesn't have long eyes. Crooked Mouth laughed playfully. Chapter 494 Population Auction House. Looking at the ridiculing Kizaru, Huo Shaoshan felt helpless. However, what Kizaru said was indeed correct. As a world aristocrat, the fierceness accumulated over the past 800 years is not something that ordinary people can provoke. To a certain extent, even the four emperors did not want to touch the bad luck of the Tianlong people. Okay, Kasaragi, don't talk nonsense. Let's settle the things, Sengoku explained first. Akainu urged in a deep voice. However, with such a big movement, even if that guy really happened to be here, I'm afraid he would have already run away. Hehe, if it's really what you said, I am afraid Sengoku will be directly pissed off. Kizaru pouted and said slyly, I'm afraid, when we go back, we won't be able to eat kabuto and leave. Let's go then. After Akainu left this remark lightly, he turned around and left with his troops. Huang Yuan also glanced at it one more time, and after the Tianlong people's ship, he walked quickly. For a time, the huge port fell into a brief silence. Okay, let's not investigate what happened. After seeing the two people leave, Huo Shaoshan turned around and shouted. As soon as the voice fell, a huge noble warship had resisted the port. The three figures in specially made suits like astronauts, with goldfish bowls on their heads, were the first to catch everyone's eyes. Haha, I saw the Admiral just now. Is this the highest standard to welcome me? A man with a wretched face and a pouting goldfish mouth looked around excitedly. Immediately behind him was a slightly older Tianlong, and a woman. Charles Maid and Charles Luna. The two may not be as excited as Charles Marco, but there is an inexplicable urgency on their faces. I'm sorry for the three adults, the two generals are here to carry out the mission in the Chambord Islands this time. Huo Shaoshan hurriedly stepped forward and explained. Performing a mission. Charles Marco's face sank, and he immediately said unpleasantly, isn't it the highest mission for our Charles family to come to the Chambord Islands? This is only contempt for our Charles family. Looking at this desperate Tianlong, the Navy soldiers present immediately looked at each other in dismay. Huo Shaoshan couldn't speak at once. After all, the brain circuits of Tianlong people were different from ordinary people. Hehe, Marco, don't be impulsive. Since the general is here, there is still a way for the king to get him to come over obediently and meet you. Charles Mad smiled and patted Charles Marco on the shoulder. Don't forget, this time we are going back to buy some new pets. Now that the time is almost up, let's go first. As soon as these words fell, Charles Marco's eyes suddenly lit up, and he said anxiously, I heard that this time there are Murloc slaves, and there are many beautiful female slaves, this time I want all of them. Marco, have you forgotten your promise with me? The slave girl is for me. I'm tired of playing the ones in my house. Those dog-like faces stick out their tongues like a dog when they see me. That tame feeling is completely gone. Quote. Charles Luna, who had not spoken all the time, said contemptuously, these inferior people don't even have the slightest sense of shame. This time, I hope to find a few good slaves. Let's see if their bones are tough or my whip is tough. Looking at your words, my words, compare human beings to three celestial dragons like animals. The Navy soldiers present and Huo Shaoshan's cheeks couldn't help twitching. If it wasn't because of their status, I'm afraid that in normal times, when they encounter such a person, many of them can't hold back their breath, and they just kick them when they went up. However, due to the identity of Tianlong people, it is obvious that here, all the naval soldiers, and even Huo Shaoshan, can only forcefully escort them with laughter. Right now, he can only pray that this tortured task can be completed as soon as possible. At the same time, the first island of the Chambord Islands also welcomed a variety of people from the upper class. After receiving the auction list of the largest population auction house in the Chambord archipelago, they gathered here. Perhaps it was the habit of slaves brought by the Tianlong people that made these clinging nobles follow suit. In order to please the Tianlong people, some people specially searched for some special slaves and went to contribute. In the huge auction, the seats were already full, and the crowd was so crowded that people had to verify their property qualifications even to enter. I heard that the murloc in this auction is a combination of murlocs and giants. It is a very precious species. I must take it down and present it to those adults. A noble man looked at his hands excitedly. Auction list, and the pot-bellied companions around him spit fragrance. HMPH, it's really vulgar. How can a murloc compare to a mermaid? If it were me, I would definitely take a picture of the mermaid. Unfortunately, it has not appeared for too long. What the hell are those smugglers doing? Even this trivial matter can't be done properly. A gorgeous feather fan in the hands of a lady suddenly opened, interrupting. Hee hee, mermaids are hard to catch, but I heard that during this time, someone caught the angel of the Sky Island, and the ornamental value is as good as that of mermaids. The scene suddenly became lively. In the face of the trend brought by the Tianlong people, this group of so-called nobles obviously used this to demonstrate one of their qualifications to be among the celebrities. Seeing the excitement, talking about others, like a herd, Bastius, who was sitting at the edge of the aisle, was stunned. What's the matter, aren't you used to the aristocratic behavior? Chinyu raised his head with a dry smile and said, this is the so-called justice your navy defends. The group of nobles behind that acted like robbers and spoke unscrupulously to control the life and death of others. If it weren't for their pursuit of slaves as a status symbol for clinging to the powerful, there would not be such a large-scale population auction. The slightly elongated voice was very clear in this noisy environment. Bastiu's expression was stagnant, he wanted to speak and then stopped, but he couldn't speak. Only thing that can be done is to bite the bullet and change the subject. Have you found the person you are looking for? Bastiu couldn't figure out what Chinyu said about Rayleigh, but every time he mentioned it, there was an inexplicable familiarity. Not to mention that Chinyu insisted on finding this Rayleigh, even Bastius was a little eager to know. It is that number one person, who deserves such hard work by the skeleton demon, and taking such a big risk to come to find it. Haha, it has been confirmed, that guy should be in the next auction, but his temperament has never changed. Chinyu looked at the 8th order auction in his hand and said with a dry smile. However, this also saves Chinyu a lot of searching for the next round. Chapter 495_lowly people don't deserve love. The person you're looking for is a slave. Bastiu couldn't help being surprised. In his eyes, the person that Chinyu had spent so much time looking for should be a special existence. Now risking the possibility of being pursued by the Navy, coming here to find a slave is too unexpected. Haha, can't you? People who can be auctioned off as slaves are not simple things. Chinyu laughed dryly and continued to browse the list in his hand. However, unlike the original book, there was no so-called rare mermaid auction item because of his random entry. As for the so-called Sky Islanders, the long-handed and long-legged family, Chinyu did not dare to be interested. Ding dang, congratulations to the host for obtaining 500 points of World Unrest. The current balance is 503 points, and 3,500 points are needed until the next random restriction is lifted. The ethereal voice of the system suddenly sounded. Chinyu couldn't help raising his brows, looking a little surprised. However, I quickly remembered the matter of delivering Shachi. It seems that her work efficiency is faster than expected. Moreover, Fire Fist Ace, the new king, brought him a bigger shock to the world than expected. This is also an unexpected gain. Okay, distinguished guests, the time is almost up. Those who didn't arrive in time and missed this auction are a huge pity. A shout suddenly sounded on the stage, and it quickly attracted everyone's attention. Chin-Yu put down the product display card in his hand and looked at the auction table. If he remembered correctly, this man in a suit should be the disco who helped Shichibukai Doflamingo manage the human trafficking business. Feeling the gazes from all around, a trace of excitement appeared on Disco's face. The number of nobles who came to auction this time exceeded his expectations, which meant that the next auction would get more price returns. Most importantly, these nobles are much more fooled than those shrewd businessmen and pirates. Thinking of this, Disco felt that he was getting closer and closer to the status of a core member of the Don Quixote family. That is an existence called a black market emperor, and the word clown is second only to the existence of the four emperors. With such a big backer, this population auction house can be opened on the Chambord archipelago unscrupulously, and the business will become bigger and bigger. Okay, everyone is about to start the auction now, but this time, the way we auction will change a little, and at the same time to increase everyone's fun. Disco returned to his senses and tried his best to make his voice more infectious. As soon as these words fell, the nobles in the field immediately caused a commotion. In the eyes of these idlers, the part of pleasing is the time when they feel the most happy physically and mentally. Feeling the urgent gaze from all around, Disco suddenly understood what he was saying and played a key role. Okay, since everyone is so enthusiastic, let's not talk nonsense and go straight to the stock. Disco shouted in a hurry. Because there are more products this time, and at the same time to increase the fun, we will now start an auction of two groups. Send up items 1 to 8. The voice fell, and the guards who were already waiting in the background sent the slaves up one after another. 8 in one form, 2 pairs or 1 pair. The first pair is a fish giant and a beautiful black peony with dark human skin, and the second pair is the long-handed family and the long-legged family. The third pair is an air island girl with small wings and a hideous murloc. The fourth pair was a girl with long pink hair and short hot pants, and an old man with silver hair and a whitewashed cloak. Looking at the goods that were brought up, the nobles in the field suddenly became boiling. Look at how strong the pectoral muscles of the fish giant are, it's not bad to buy it back for viewing. Che, I don't believe an old woman like you. You have no crooked thoughts. I said, that angel-like innocent girl on the empty island, with such a pitiful appearance, I really wish I could be whipped twice, and then slashed twice in the face, it feels very refreshing. The rumors that came out one after another made the atmosphere in the field suddenly push to ultimate. The excitement in the eyes of Disco who witnessed this scene was even more intense. After hitting the mallet twice in his hand, he shouted anxiously. Okay, everyone can see that these are high-quality goods. In order to allow everyone to participate in the fun of bidding, we will start with low prices. The rare combination of a murloc and a giant produces a powerful murloc and a girl with a special skin color. The reserve price is 500,000 Baileys. 500,000 Baileys. Bastiou couldn't help but startled, and said, can this person sell for such a high price? After all, the salaries of their navy are not high, and in the original book, Zoro bought blades in Rog Town. The 3 generations of ghosts are regarded as cursed blades, but ordinary blades are also 10,000 to 20,000 Baileys. Right now, as soon as the 2 slaves opened their mouths, they bid 500,000 Baileys, which was enough to subvert Bastius's cognition. Hi, Chin-Yu shook his head with a playful smile and said, now is the beginning. The inexplicable words made Bastius startled for a while, and the next moment he shouted one after another, which changed his expression drastically. 60,000 Baileys. 700,000 Baileys. 800,000 Baileys. 1,000,000 Baileys. The hurried bidding sound instantly made the price break through to 1 million. Looking at the usually ferocious fish giant on the stage, he was now terrified, not to mention the dark-skinned girl beside him, who was already crying with rain. Instead, the pink-haired girl standing with Rayleigh looked unusually calm. 1 million for the first time, 1 million for the second time, Has anyone bid more than 1 million? Disco repeated twice, obviously intending to keep raising the price. I pay 1,100,000 Baileys. A man in tattered clothes rushed in at the gate. Holding a large bag of crumpled Baileys in his hands, he looked at the dark-skinned girl, and shouted in a hurry, "Disco, you promised that as long as I collect 1,000,000 Baileys, you will redeem my fiancé for me. Why do you keep your word?" The sudden appearance of the man broke the silence in the field, and all the nobles showed expressions of contempt and disgust. "Disco, who is this person? With such a stinky body, can all cats and dogs be able to enter? This will lower our status as aristocrats. Who will come in the future? HMPH, I originally planned to watch the play, but such a lowly person is not worthy of love, and the best fit is to fight." A pot-bellied noble laughed playfully. Immediately in front of everyone's eyes, he raised his hand and said, "I'll give 1.5 million Baileys. I'll pay 2 million. 2.5 million Baileys." The rapidly rising price made Bastius dumbfounded. Do not. It should be said that at the same time, the man who came in a hurry and the dark-skinned girl on the stage were confused. They never imagined that the only ray of hope that they had left would be crushed so easily by the so-called nobles. Chapter 496 I don't mind justice being late. No, Disco, you promised me, I'll give you 1.2 million Bailey, and you give me back your fiancé. The man growled dully. However, in the face of all this, in addition to the laughter, there was a playful gaze. Hee, Disco, this isn't an episode you specially choreographed, but I like the atmosphere very much. A thin-faced aristocrat said mockingly, so, I'm willing to give 3 million Baileys. 3 million Baileys. Bastius' pupils shrank suddenly, and his salary as a lieutenant general was only hundreds of thousands of Baileys a year. However, now, because of the words of the nobles, the value of a girl and a fish giant has been raised to 3 million Bailey. At this moment, Bastius finally understood what Chin Yu's words just now meant. If these nobles hadn't pursued slaves, it would never have produced such a huge value market. No, Disco, you promised me, I'll give you all the money, I just want to get back to my fiancé. The man in tattered clothes exclaimed anxiously with a twisted expression. However, what responded to him was Disco's teasing face, and said with a smile, "Ula, are you a fool to make a promise to a slave merchant? How much is this worth? But I really thank you, give it to me such a high price." Quote. Someone robbed him of his money, and threw him out at the same time. As soon as the voice fell, the thugs guarding the two sides laughed playfully. Seeing this scene, Bastius' face changed slightly, and he bit Kiba and said, Is there any justice for this? I must stop them." The hurried voice came out of Bastius's mouth, but unfortunately, before he could do it, the first scene that caught his eye caused his pupils to shrink suddenly. Boom! The gunshot sounded suddenly, and the fiery bullet pierced through the man's right back instantly. Chimpanzee Yuhi's blood splashed down, staggered under his feet, and fell directly to the ground. Immediately, the whole person quickly rolled down the stairs below, and finally slammed into the ground of the high platform, making a thunderous sound of heavy objects. The violent scene made Bastius' nerves tense all of a sudden, and the moment when he was about to stand up, a cold and unpredictable voice came from a mentally handicapped man. "Dad, look at how beautiful my shot is. I killed a lowly blocking dog." Three figures came first at the gate. Looking at the tight attire like a space suit, and the hood like a goldfish bowl, as for the snot hanging from the nostrils, and the imbecile dancing, they were completely ignored by them. The next moment, in the silent scene, there was an overwhelming sound. It's the nobles of the world, the royal family of Charles, who actually visited the Chambord Islands. Oh my God, we were able to coexist with the world's nobles at the same auction. This is simply a great honor. Back in the country, this is the capital of bragging. Lord Charles Marco, Your marksmanship is really accurate, much better than those of the Navy, you are my idol. Quote. One after another, flattering words rang out in the field. In the face of this overwhelming admiration, after Charles Marco snorted forcefully, he laughed lowly. Dad, did you hear? They all say that my marksmanship is better than the Navy. When I go back later, you will prepare 100 slaves for me, and I will shoot them all. While talking, Charles Marco didn't forget, playing with the pistol and pointing around. The only thing that makes people feel fortunate is that they didn't shoot this time, otherwise the same fate awaits them. What's the matter, aren't you going to seek justice? Going out now? I don't think justice has come too late, but that person hasn't died yet. Chinyu smiled playfully and looked at Bastiu beside him. He is not a virgin, and he is already used to seeing life and death, so it is not that death is not saved, but it is worth it or not. Bastiu suffocated Yuhi's face and looked at the 3 celestial dragons standing at the door. There are also the Navy soldiers who came in. Although they looked at this scene, they all looked at each other in dismay. However, in the face of the clear identity of the Tianlong people, he just did not dare to take a step forward. It's okay, Mark, didn't you say you liked the auction? The goods are good this time, let's continue. Charles Mad smiled smugly. As a world noble, he just likes the feeling of being able to go out and hug back. After all, in their eyes, ants need bragging capital, and their world nobles also need bragging topics. Yes, Dad, I want to buy a lot of slaves. Charles Marco's eyes lit up, and he looked at the high platform with a snot. Hurry up and auction, or I will kill you with one shot. I like this fish giant very much. 350,000 Baileys out. While talking, Charles Marco raised the gun in his hand, making Disco's face change, and hurriedly shouted, 3.5 million Bailey, is there anyone who is more expensive than this? In the face of Disco's questioning, the huge scene fell silent. After all, as long as they are not fools, absolutely no one is willing to take food from the tiger's mouth. Seeing this scene, Disco quickly flattered and shouted, the first time at 3.5 million Baileys, the second time at 3.5 million Baileys, the third time at 3.5 million Baileys. Congratulations to Lord Charles Marco, for obtaining a rare fish giant and a rare maiden. As soon as these words fell, the 2 slaves were dragged down by the guards standing by. Watching this scene, Charles Marco immediately became excited and said, the girl with long arms and legs, and the girl with wings. I didn't expect that this time. There are so many rare slaves. I want all of them, 5 million Baileys. Opening his mouth is $1 million start, and Bastiu's expression turned ashen. The price of this casual bidding is almost over 10 million Baileys. He finally realized how crazy the nobles were in Chin Yu's words. 5 million for the first time. 5 million for the third time. If no one bids, it will be sold immediately. Disco's face showed ecstasy. Although Charles Marco disrupted his sales layout in one bite, it was 5 million as soon as he opened it. This is more than the ideal price in his mind. How can he be a little less cheerful in the face of such a generous guest? Hey, why is there an old man? What's going on? Charles Marco asked curiously as he watched the slaves he photographed being taken down, and the 2 who were only left on the high platform. However, the long pink-haired slave looks very fresh. Don't you want it, sister? I'll take a picture for you now. While speaking, Charles Marco raised his hand and shouted. Chapter 497 I want both of these. This old man looks too ugly. If he buys it back, he won't be able to fight, nor will he be able to watch it. But he's not bad at practicing guns. I paid 3 million Baileys and bought them all. Charles Marco's shouts echoed in the huge auction house for a long time and could not be dissipated. In the face of his status as a nobleman in the world, he has to start with $1 million price. For others, the population auction house is completely reduced to his personal show. However, looking at the old man on the stage who was devalued and worthless, Bastiu subconsciously looked at Chinyu. In the face of a series of events that exceeded his expectations, Bastiu obviously ignored the most important things. In front of him, the big demon of killing god and skeleton came to look for someone. When he saw the faint smile on Chinyu's face, Bastiu's nerves suddenly tightened to ultimate. Before he could react, the big hand that was raised slowly and the words he spoke were like a shocking thunder, tearing the eardrums of everyone. I want these two slaves. The small voice suddenly sounded, and it seemed extremely annoying in such a one-word show. The moment everyone's nerve strings were plucked, their eyes locked on Uchiha Chinyu's body. In their eyes, this person is simply crazy. Dad, what is this person talking about? He dared to rob the nobles of our world and let me kill him with one shot. Charles Marco laughed playfully. While speaking, Charles Marco raised the musket in his hand and pointed at Chinyu with a dull technique. However, before he could pull the trigger, a hurried shout suddenly sounded. Huo Shaoshan, hurry up and stop this idiot, this person is a skeleton demon. Bastius growled anxiously. He knew very well the identity and status of Tianlong people, but he recalled the conversation between Chinyu and Shachi in the tavern. And the act of being relentless at the moment made him think of an extremely ridiculous idea. This guy won't take a shot at Tianlong people for the sake of fame. Chaotic thoughts flashed in Bastius' mind. He didn't have time to think about it, he took the lead in shaving and hurried to the Tianlong people. However, as soon as he moved, the familiar tone that fell in his ear made Bastiu's nerves tense to ultimate. It seems that your justice scale is also tilted, but you should not hinder my road to fame. The soft voice suddenly became cold at this moment. Before Bastiu could look back, an unusually evil gloom rolled back like a frenzy. Undead Talent's Spiritual Storm. Boom. The violent mental pressure, like a frenzy, detonated in Chinyu's body, and immediately swept away like a hurricane. Wherever they passed, those so-called nobles, as well as the guards, didn't react, and their expressions suddenly fell into a sluggishness. The next moment, everyone was harvested like leeks and fell to the ground. The violent scene made it impossible for the three Tianlong people to escape, especially the pistol in Charles Marco's hand that had not had time to pull, but fell out of his hands. In the huge venue, only 7 or 8 elite Navy soldiers remained, barely keeping their consciousness clear. At the same time, there was Huo Shaoshan who led the team, and Bastiu who flew out. As for the high platform, the guards had already fallen unconscious. Only Disco, the fish giant, and the last auctioned Hades Rayleigh, and the pink-haired girl were left. However, in the face of the violent scene, they obviously couldn't recover, except for the surprise on their faces, they almost split their eye sockets. It can be said that the identity of the world noble of the Tianlong people just now is clearly here. Whether it is nobles from all over the world, or a group of navies, or even lieutenant generals. The only thing they can do is to obey the orders of these draconians who claim to be their creators. However, now suddenly a young man appeared, turned into a hideous skeleton demon, and then the soul flame in his eyes rose. Swept the audience directly, and brought down these nobles like leaks. If you hadn't seen it with your own eyes, who would want to believe that this scene was true? In this world, there were people who dared to attack Tianlong people. Hee, I haven't met such a powerful young man in a long time, Conqueror's Haki. But this doesn't seem right. A smile appeared on Rayleigh's face, and he took out the grindstone in his arms. The whitish silver-colored jug poured it into his mouth. However, the only pity is that the last stock in this jug has obviously been exhausted. What is Conqueror's Haki? The girl with long pink hair interrupted suddenly. Rayleigh followed the sound with interest and said, "You little girl, you really aren't an ordinary person. However, for your eagerness to learn, let me tell you something. This so-called conqueror's Hokage is actually 1 in a million people who have the appearance of an emperor, only have the means. As for you, it doesn't seem to give me that feeling. The pink-haired girl was stunned at first, and then she snorted with disdain on her face. I don't care about this so-called emperor's appearance, but if you dare to take action against Tianlongren, I will see how he ends. Speaking of which, the pink long-haired girl flashed a dignified look on her face. When Rayleigh heard the words, he touched the tip of his nose and said, however, this kid seems to be coming at us, and I don't know what he's trying to do. And what is unexpected is that the skeleton demon who is rumored to be the mastermind behind the city's escape is so young. When these words fell, the pink long-haired girl was startled at first. The next moment, a sound of breaking through the air suddenly sounded, tensing her nerves. Bang! Rayleigh raised his brows and looked at the thing he took in response, which was a bottle of wine. Before Rayleigh could react, the words that fell in his ear made his expression stagnate. Rayleigh, drink this wine first, and then I'll get together with you after I settle the matter. Rayleigh. Bastius landed on Huo Shaoshan's side, and before he could react, Huo Shaoshan by his side had already moved first. There are flaws. Flower Sakura, wave slash. As soon as Huo Shaoshan made his move, he directly cast shaving and disappeared into place. When he appeared again, he was already behind Qinyu. Looking at the sword wrapped around the Sakura, when Bastia's face changed drastically, he hurriedly shouted, Huo Shaoshan, come back quickly, this guy is a monster. Monster. Huo Shaoshan couldn't help but startled for a moment, but looking at Qinyu who was close at hand, it seemed that he hadn't reacted yet. Right now the arrow has to be fired, and the only thing that can be done is to do it. Thinking of this, a ruthless look flashed across Huo Shaoshan's face, his hands tightened to ultimate, and he slashed towards Qinyu. Chapter 498 This bad old man is Raleigh the Hades. Merman Karate 20,000 watt straight punch. Cold words came out. Looking at the slashing from the head, Qinyu's deep-set eyes, the soul flame instantly soared. At the moment when the big hands and 5 fingers of the bones were suddenly clenched, the dark armament Haki covered it, and the next moment, with a thunderous gesture, he punched in the face. Bang! With a punch, the air seemed to be penetrated, and the low sonic boom sounded like mad thunder. The surrounding space was filled with air ripples like ripples. Before Huo Shaoshan could react, they collided in an instant. Boom! Knives intersect. They collided with each other with a stubborn attitude. The explosive power of 20,000 watts, like a raging dragon, poured out towards the Huoshao mountain, clenching the hands of Tadao tightly, and the tiger's mouth hurt. The sharp blade in his hand clapped, and a shocking crack appeared in response. Before Huo Shaoshan could react, the sword in his hand cut him off. Covered with pitch-black ink, Armament Haki's fist, like a cannonball, was directly printed on his chest. Bang! 3 low-pitched explosions came out. That seemingly cumbersome scene, before and after is just a blink of an eye. When everyone reacted, Huo Shaoshan had already flew out like a cannonball. Mouthful of Yuhi's blood spurted out of his mouth, like a dazzling firework, which was shocking. Burning the mountain. Bastiu's face changed drastically, and he had no time to think about it, so he pulled away and rushed over quickly. With the sound of heavy objects hitting again, the burning mountain slammed into Bastiu's arms. Under the impact of tremendous force, the two of them smashed directly on the Jinchuriki column surrounded by several people behind them. What a domineering Murloc karate! Rayleigh raised his head and took a sip of the wine brought by Qinyu. After relieving his craving, his cloudy eyes lit up. I didn't expect that there would be humans who would use Murlocs. Karate, and Armament Haki's condensed level, and the degree of integration of Murloc karate, are simply perfect. If I hadn't seen his true colors, I'm afraid even I would have thought that the big skeleton was a Murloc. In the face of Rayleigh's evaluation, the pink long-haired girl was also confused. In the eyes of her waiting for me, I can only summarize what Rayleigh said in 2 words. Strong. After all, during the days of drifting at sea, she had seen the strength of the Vice Admiral with her own eyes. Moreover, Huo Shaoshan was stationed on the Chambord Islands during this period of time, but from time to time she took action to suppress many pirates, and she was fortunate enough to witness it with her own eyes. Huo Shaoshan, are you all right? Bastiu struggled and wriggled, his body pressed by the burning mountain. Fortunately, if I hadn't cast armament Hokage in time to protect the vitals, I'm afraid even the sternum would have been broken. Huo Shaoshan's face was a little wet, and there was still blood on the corner of his mouth. Looking at the saber that was scattered on the ground and cut off at the waist, it can be described as a lingering dread. However, before he could finish his emotion, the shouts that fell in his ears made him bewildered. If you can't die, don't get up quickly, the Tianlong people will be attacked. This is a big thing, if we don't get it, we will all die. Bastiu roared in a hurry. Thinking of this is an existence that even the generals must properly protect, but now they have been brought down directly by the 2 of them. For whatever reason, once it's passed back to the Navy headquarters, and even the world government, they can't eat Kabuto and go. Huo Shaoshan's complexion also changed drastically. Under Bastiu's urging, after calming down his blood, he hurriedly stood up, wiped the blood on the corner of his mouth, and said in a hurry, Bastiu, hurry up and bring. I stopped him as the 3 celestial dragons left. However, I'm afraid I don't have much time to stop it. You should inform the 2 generals, Akainu and Kizaru, as soon as possible. They have just landed on the island. I thought they were carrying out some secret mission. 2 generals must be dispatched to make sure nothing is lost. Quote. Having said that, Huo Shaoshan looked at Qin Yu with solemn eyes, and the stinging pain in his chest made him always be alert to the opponent in front of him. The 2 big futures are coming. Bastius was startled at first, and then his face was full of surprise. He waited for so long, but under Qin Yu's command, he endured humiliation and burden, in order to wait for the support of the 2 generals. Right now, the 2 generals are here. Does this mean that victory is at hand? Facing this piece of information, Rayleigh's expression changed slightly. He looked at Qin Yu and said, Little brother, you are so quick to teach these scumbags a lesson. It does make me feel very happy, but you seem to be unlucky. 2 generals appearing in the Chambord archipelago at the same time. I am afraid this is too much. It's better, for your sake, I'll block them for a while, you go first. When these words fell, Bastius couldn't help but stunned, and then he shouted in a hurry, Old man Rayleigh, you have underestimated our Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters too much. Maybe we can't deal with the big skeleton demon, but it's not like you just say it. You can stop it if you can, you. However, these words have not been finished yet. Huo Shaoshan clearly saw the old man on the high platform, behind the cheeks covered by silver's hair, and said anxiously, You just called him Rayleigh. Isn't this Roger's second in command, Pluto Silbazarelli? He actually knew the great skeleton demon. The expressions of everyone present froze at once. For the Navy, the name of Roger One Piece is definitely not unfamiliar. Those who helped him dominate the sea and become One Piece are even more familiar. However, they never imagined that they would collide at this juncture in such a place. A skeleton demon has already made them feel lucky enough. Now there is another Hades Rayleigh. This horse is to hit the muzzle of the gun. At this moment, they finally understood that this bad old man was Rayleigh, otherwise they would not have dared to speak to the Queen Qin Yu. However, in the face of all this, Qin Yu smiled dryly. No, I appreciate your kindness. I have done so much just to prepare a great gift for them to come. Having said that, Qin Yu looked at Bastiu and said, Hurry up and let Kizaru and the others come, otherwise time will be waiting for no one. The inexplicable scene made Bastius and the other navy stunned. Ordinary pirates run away with their tails between their tails, just like when they encounter a general but a mouse encounters a cat. I can't wait to put wings on it. However, now Qin Yu told them. Feel free to call someone, Lao Su is waiting here. It feels like stepping on a horse is a bit like smashing the field. What's the matter? Don't hurry up. If I change my mind, you can't eat kabuto and go. Qin Yu's icy voice sounded again. At this moment, it feels like death is urging life. Chapter 499_shoot when the caller is not paying attention. Hurry up and notify, I'm here to watch. Huo Shaoshan roared in a hurry. This time, he was responsible for escorting the Tianlong people. However, he never imagined that this seemingly easy task would go wrong in his hands. If something goes wrong, let alone a Navy soldier under his command, I am afraid that even he will be held accountable. Thinking of this, Huo Shaoshan felt a little more urgent. Bastiu's face was also not good-looking, but when he thought that Akainu and Kayabu were on the Chambord Islands, he immediately said in a hurry, "Don't panic, the two generals are on the island, and it will only take a moment to get here. We must not be impulsive." Having said that, Bastius didn't dare to say any more. He was worried that other people's impulsive actions would cause Qin Yu an upset, and the situation would spiral out of control. Hee, it seems that there is still some time, you all quit. Qin Yu smiled dryly. However, please rest assured, these three Tianlong people, I will not do anything to them for the time being. Say, it's still useful. Exit. Huo Shaoshan was startled. This is about their lives, and now that the Tianlong people have been attacked, they have already been implicated. If I quit again, I don't know how to explain it. Huo Shaoshan will do as he said. With two generals there, everything will be fine. Bastiu stared straight at Qin Yu, and finally bit Kiba and said. During the brief time together, he also found out a little about Qin Yu's way of doing things. This is the master who is inconvenient to fight. Moreover, in Bastiu's eyes, there are two generals, and this matter must be solved perfectly. Looking at Bastiu with a determined face, Huo Shaoshan's expression changed slightly, and he felt a little uneasy in his heart, but after seeing three more unconscious Tianlong people, he bit Kiba and signaled that the still awake subordinates retreated. Boy, what are you going to do? Rayleigh took another sip of spirits and said, generals are not like lieutenants. You need to be clear about this. As soon as Qin Yu made a move, he directly brought down the Tianlongren. This domineering move really made Rayleigh look right. However, if he had a fight here because he despised the general, this was not what he wanted to see. Haha, it's not that I underestimate the general, it's you who underestimate me. Qin Yu laughed dryly, and reached out his hand to retrieve the introduction channel from Shaqi's hand. This is what my mother-in-law asked me to give to you. Letter. ... Did Ji Yu Luoli asked you to come? Riley frowned as he took the letter of introduction and said, she saved my life that day, but I didn't expect to use her favor on you. Having said that, Layli looked at Qin Yu and said, boy, you don't plan to use this personal debt to deal with the general, right? The old man said it in advance. After so many years, I can't help tossing with my bones. At most, you can stop them for a while, so that you can escape. For Rayleigh, when he was young, he might be able to open too. But now it is different. Even Whitebeard, who is known as the strongest man at sea, can't resist the ravages of time. Maybe Rayleigh didn't feel sick all over, but his strength was obviously going downhill. Being able to say the words that stopped the two generals for a while is already very good. No, it took me so long to bring them in, not to make you stand out. Qin Yu smiled dryly, then took out a bottle of fine wine from the golden merchant ship in the sky and threw it to Rayleigh. I'm just going to use this favor to give you some guidance on how to use Conqueror's Haki. The small voice, at this moment, seemed to be filled with magic sound, and there was no way to disperse it for a long time. Looking at the terrifying skeleton demon, Rayleigh and the girl with long pink hair, he couldn't see that Chin-Yu was joking. You said, not only did you deliberately attract the two generals, but also plan to use this favor to learn how to use Conqueror's Haki without asking me to do it. Rayleigh couldn't hold back his breath. In his eyes, Chin-Yu's strength, no matter how outstanding, is still a rookie. I don't ask him to take action now, and I plan to attract the two generals. What is the difference between this and suicide? Are you thinking about it? Don't implicate us, the pink long-haired girl hurriedly said. Looking at this girl who could be suppressed by the undead talent Kamui, Chin-Yu lifted the character template and couldn't help but rolled his eyes and said, Bonnie, you are my slave now, if I have any mistakes, of course you will. Can't get away. However, I am very afraid of death, so you can rest assured of your safety. Bonnie, Riley raised his eyebrows, looking a little surprised. I thought Chin-Yu could recognize that he came prepared, but he didn't expect that Chin-Yu even knew this mysterious girl. You know me. Who the hell are you? Bonnie's expression suddenly changed, and she hurriedly asked. However, as soon as these words fell, Chin-Yu waved his hand to stop him and said, Time is running out. If you want to have a romantic relationship with me, wait until I get things done. Now, Mr. Laurelly, guide me to Conqueror's Haki. Bonnie suddenly became angry and said, You don't want to be so narcissistic. I don't want to fall in love with you, ugly bone. Why don't you hurry up, help me untie the slave ring around my neck. I'm starving to death. Looking at Bonnie, who was almost frizzy, Riley laughed dryly and said, Boy, I don't know what your plans are, but since you have made a decision, then I will guide you to learn Conqueror's Haki, but in this kind of is it right at the juncture. Of course it's suitable, but you girl, you can't even take off the collar. How dare you come to such a place? Be careful of being sold, and even help people with money. Chin-Yu laughed dryly, and his eyes fell on Bonnie at the moment. The right hand, like lightning, grabbed the slave collar around Bonnie's neck. Before Bonnie could react, she yanked the slave's collar abruptly with lightning speed. Bang! The collar was thrown directly in the air, and immediately exploded. Immediately following the same method, the collar on Rayleigh's neck was easily removed. Seeing this scene, Bonnie was obviously stunned in place. What's the matter? You shoot when the collar is not paying attention, aren't you? Chin-Yu reached out and grabbed Bonnie's head with a smile. Stop, dare to take advantage of the old lady. Bonnie suddenly woke up and hurriedly dodged. For the collar on her neck, she tried several methods, but she still couldn't take it off. Never thought that Chin-Yu would be able to pull off the collar so easily before the explosion. Chapter 500 Armament Haki Incarnates. Boy, your method is really good. You can cut off the explosion sensor of the collar through Lu Ying in an instant. It seems that you are very skilled in the use of armament Haki. Rayleigh also said a little surprised. However, the use of Conqueror's Haki, but it will be more difficult than this. Are you really sure you want to do it here? Auctioning off his own affairs, which he often does. It can be said that the auction houses on the Chambord Islands let him cheat once. However, he also knew how much effort it would take to untie the collar. Looking at Rayleigh, who had repeatedly confirmed it, Chin-Yu rolled his eyes helplessly and said, Mr. Rayleigh, if you linger with Akainu, they will arrive. Don't worry, I won't cheat afterwards. Alright then, I want to see it too. You look shriveled, don't listen to the explanation, and you're still confused. Seeing Chin-Yu's insistence, Rayleigh didn't want to spend any more time. Go straight to the topic. I don't know where the mental shock you just cast came from, but this thing is very similar to Conqueror's Haki. In the end, Conqueror's Haki is a special person, and the Emperor's will is born with it. It is different from the two-color domineering, but it can also act on the two-color domineering. You can understand that a person who has a Conqueror's Haki has two soul, and the second soul, Conqueror's Haki. As he spoke, Rayleigh took a sip of wine and raised his right hand. Before Bonnie could react, the pitch-black armament hockey quickly spread out, covering the entire arm. "This is armament hockey, we call it Junior." Riley glanced at Bonnie, who was confused, and explained it deliberately. "The next intermediate armament hockey will be darker and more indestructible. You can understand that the thickness of the domineering is different. As for the high-level armament hockey, it is to liquefy the sakura to form a power similar to inner strength, which can not only enhance the defense, but also enhance the attack power." Speaking of which, the domineering arrogance in Rayleigh's hands flowed like a liquid, and the aura that permeated it became thicker, causing Bonnie's beautiful eyes to stare down, as if a new door had been opened. However, before Bonnie could react, the next moment, Rayleigh's eyes narrowed. The laziness that was exuding from the whole body changed in an instant. Before everyone could react, it turned into a sharp-edged blade. Of strange orangutan yuhi patterns spread quickly on the arm. Lu Ying, who was originally flowing like a tide, wriggled rapidly at this moment and turned into a real body directly in Rayleigh's hands. What caught the eye was a long mi shoe, the whole body was as black as ink, and the sharp blade exuded a chilling light. As expected, Conqueror's Hockey, which can enhance the power of the two-color domineering, has a meaning similar to fuel. Chin Yu's eyes lit up involuntarily. In the original book, he knew Luffy's fourth gear, but he improved his own strength by quickly consuming the three-color domineering. At the same time, in the TV version, there is a Vice Admiral Kong Ming, who can realize the means of armament hockey. "Hee, I didn't expect that you know quite a lot, kid." Riley laughed dryly and said, "A person's domineering strength can be improved through exercise, but Conqueror's Hockey is born, and there are few means of exercise." Quote, "If you want to realize armament hockey alone, it requires high-intensity exercise and a long accumulation of time." Having said that, Rayleigh looked at Chin Yu and said, "Your talent is good. I think in a month or two, you will be able to awaken Conqueror's Hockey, and to achieve the realization of armed colors. If you train under my hands, it should take 2 years. Time. However, you use the favor I owe just now. If you want my guidance, would you mind?" Seeing Rayleigh raise the jug in his hand, Chin Yu rolled his eyes helplessly, and said, "Just tell me the trick. I don't want to owe you to this poor old man." This wine and gambling is simply the joy of Rayleigh's life. However, for Chin Yu, spending time to learn is just nonsense. What he really needs to do is how to master the know-how of perceiving Conqueror's Hockey. "I really don't need it." Riley was stunned for a moment, then added hastily, "I'm a famous teacher. Look at Yuhi's hair. You know, that kid worked under me and wiped my back for several years. Only then did I promise to guide him, and at that time, he had to warm the bed for me." Quote. However, in addition to him, there is also a Yuhi knows. Tenten ran to be a clown, but his qualifications are a bit dull. Of course, there are many famous pirates who have asked me for guidance. Why don't you bring me some wine? I will be slow count to you slowly. In order to drink some free drinks, Rayleigh obviously gave up, and even sold his relationship with Yuhifa. Chin Yu felt helpless and said, "You poor old man, you even sold Yuhi's hair for drinking. Be careful if he drags someone to chop you. You just need to tell me the trick to awakening Conqueror's Hockey. As for the drinks, when I came, I hijacked a merchant ship that transported gold from the sky. There's a lot on it, you can go get it." Heavenly gold. Bonnie was startled. In the original work, she played the Queen Mother of the Ice Cream Country, and of course she knew that the gold in the sky represented the face of the Tianlong people. Ordinary pirates don't even dare to touch them at all. In order to avoid a head-on conflict with the world government and the Navy headquarters, the 4 emperors would not let their subordinates touch them. However, now that Chin Yu was on his way, he had taken the gold from the sky, which was too shocking to the world. She finally understood why Chin Yu still attacked when the identity of the Tianlong people was clearly in front of her. "You kid, You even rob the gold in the sky, but I like it. Rayleigh said with a big laugh. However, the easiest way to awaken Conqueror's Haki, I really have one, that is, I will directly shock your spirit with domineering to forcefully activate it, but the success rate is very low. Are you sure you want to try? Of course, you poor old man, don't give a shit, they're coming soon. Chinyu rolled his eyes and said. For Chinyu, who has a one-key full-level system, as long as there is a chance, it is enough. Looking at Chinyu, who had made up his mind, Riley sighed helplessly. I really don't understand, what the hell are you thinking about? However, that's fine, the old man wanted to see you, a shriveled boy with a confident face. As he said that, this time Rayleigh was not idle, the moment when the Tachi incarnated by armament Haki collapsed into the sky and the earth. The index finger of the right hand tapped Chinyu's forehead lightly, and the next moment, the cloudy eyes suddenly condensed and became as sharp as a falcon.